gather around me, children, I'll tell you the news. Don't worry about the names or dates, you already know it's true. Your doctor hates your baby, the prime minister's a ghost, and all them folks are sailing here 'cause they're in love with boats. Superfoods can save us from all our evil sin. JFK and Elvis own a bar in Wisconsin. And vaccinations were created by the CIA to steal votes from Bernie Sanders and turn your babies gay. So click the link you think you like and get tooled for a fight against those lefty fascist communists who are leaning too far right.
Hi and welcome to Not Another Fake Newscast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jerry, and we're here with Becci Wallace. Becci has recently released her album, Present Tense, which she sickeningly wrote during lockdown. High achiever and all that, making us all feel bad. It's a kind of, I've seen it described as a folk hop record. But what do you kind of consider your genre to be, Becci?
It's the worst question because I don't, to be honest, man. I think folk hop's the closest description. Maybe dark pop, folk hop, like around about that. It kind of crosses over genre quite a lot. You know, I kind of go with a flowery term, but I go where the song takes me a lot of the time.
Which is fair enough. Like yeah. I know so I've been listening to the past couple of days. For me, you know, you might disagree with this, but major Kate Bush coming out at me as soon as I cracked it on, like with the voice and stuff, and the kind of ethereal sort of sound.
Can I just go on that as well and say I phoned up Jerry today, and that was the first thing I said to him was like, heavy Kate Bush vibes on that, like just like,
which is a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean it in like the most endearing of ways, because it's I'm a singer. Jerry's a singer. We were singers in bands for a long time, and Kate Bush has got some fucking.
Sing like you, by the way. You can sing, Becci.
I like to sing, guys. I think that's like, I'm pure into Kate Bush. Obviously, I don't know anybody that's no, but I think like it's a go-to when you hear something that's a bit weird. You're just like, this is probably like Kate Bush, or I get like Scottish Bjork a lot as well. Just like, right. What's a bit weird with a girl that sings?
It was like a specific Kate Bush song.
I know. I strive to be weird. Like I always say, my shows at the end, I always end it with a song that makes people go, huh? Like just like that's a good way to leave people. Just kind of like, is that it? So
like. It reminded me of specific Kate Bush songs, like something like That Woman's Work or whatever, like just that with the piano and the singing, especially the first few songs in the album. Like, I'm also going to tell you the truth. I thought it was like, for me, it was quite a sad album in a lot of ways. I listened to the Sound of Cats for the first time when I was driving yesterday, and I was greeting. Nobody lie. I was just like, just cut me like a ton of bricks. And I'm guessing like, you know, or something like parts of that seemed like it was about being in lockdown and about the situation of it.
Aye, it's funny you said that because it's a bit patchwork actually, because although I finished my album in lockdown, I didn't write it in lockdown, all of it. I finished it in lockdown. So Sound of Cats, yeah, I wrote that in lockdown. Paper Wings, which is the last song, To the Water, which is in the middle somewhere, and I finished some songs off. But it is a sad album, and I'm okay with that. Like, I wrote it after I had my second child, and Darren, my husband, was away a lot, and I just kind of hit a wee bit of rock bottom. I used the album as a way to get out of that, no doubt. Like, I hadn't written in like 2 years, no touched pen to paper at all, and I was teaching music, so I was doing a lot of teaching and like pure preaching to other young songwriters about how they should write, and you know, supporting them and all that, and going to their gigs, and a wee part of me was just like, the fire had just kind of diminished, and then it just all pure burst out of me. So it sounds like a lockdown album because I did write it for isolation, but it wasn't specifically lockdown. Do you know what I mean? I think I was totally prepared for lockdown because of that, man. Like when lockdown came, I was like, okay, we can do this. So you're going to sit in a room on your own, right? Sound? I've got this. I've got a song for that.
Did you record the instruments on the album?
Like my first album, like I obviously wrote and arranged and composed it, and I would like add in the instruments. But this time I went with a producer, two producers for the whole album. So basically what I would do is I would like open up my Pro Tools or whatever, obviously record the vocals, record the harmonies, record the instruments, and then like add mad wee sounds, like just whatever like I was feeling, like obviously with my plugins that came with Pro Tools, and then I would send it to the producer and be like, this is I'll just like bounce it down as like pure dark plingy noise or something. and then the producers would take it and like build the world around these mad electronic sounds that I had put in, which I think it was probably sounded a lot brighter when it had my mad wee weird sounds in it, but I had kind of the girls that produced it, Nova Sound, who are the girl that cried wolf, that's the same two girls. Right. Like we had a good chat before it, and I was like, this is what it's about, and this is the voice that I want it to feel like, you know, this is the world I want you to build. And they did a pure amazing job of that. So as much as I played all the instruments and blah blah blah, I think their collaboration built the world around it. It's exactly how I imagine it hearing, but something I couldn't do myself on Pro Tools, you know, like especially for my bedroom.
Like, see, it sounds like for hearing you talk then there was like a kind of therapeutic element to writing this and getting it on paper, like getting it out of you, and you can hear the emotion in the album like 100%.
Yeah, it's catharsis, and I think like there's some people who write for like, and it's cool for whatever reason you write, you know, because it's a beautiful thing to do. And I think there's some people that write because, you know, they've got a goal in mind, a set goal, and you know it's for this. Actually, I'm compelled to write. It's like a compulsion in me that when I don't do it, it's really not good. I'm not in a good headspace. So when I write, it definitely helps to kind of work through stuff. If you meet me, I'm always happy. Like I'm you know, I'm quite fun to be around, but all my songs like they deal with quite deep issues, but I think that's just my catharsis. It's like my way of just working through them, you know. So with my first album, I wrote each of the songs for different parts of the world when I was in them, so it's got much more of a kind of movement to it. It feels a lot more paced, and it feels more, I don't know, like a little bit exotic and kind of up-tempo, whereas this one, I wrote it for a corner in a room, you know what I mean? So it's got that vibe going.
It comes across.
Safe as houses, safe alone, rainbow chalk on dirty glass, fingerprints from tiny hands, and the sound of cats over the sound of cars.
Like and there's through lines through it, like the first few songs at least have there's like a kind of mad like scrapey like string noise that goes through the first few songs, like which is interesting because you said like the sound of cats you obviously wrote later and whatever. So was that something that the producers added to it?
Well, it was my direction because I always think I love that Joni Mitchell album, Court and Spark. And the reason I like it so much is because although there's 8 tracks on it, it never stops. There's connective tissue that kind of rolls through the whole thing. And so there's like little motifs in my album, like a heartbeat, like that kind of is in the distance a lot and comes right through on the song Petal, which is my daughter's heartbeat. So it's like colour scorched my skin so tired, petals signify a kind of rip back to reality from madness from the song before. But like throughout the album, there's these little motifs that you hear. So it is intentional and like part of the process of the vision into it. It's like the creative vision for it.
It's like Dark Side of the Moon. Like there's themes that goes
If
like
you
you know what I
play
mean.
it
Like
backwards, it's a satanic ritual.
and it also syncs up perfectly with the opening scenes of Wizard of Oz.
Well, actually, Return to Oz. Have
Oh,
you seen
of course.
that? It's fucking scary.
Oh, Return to
Oh,
Oz. I was actually thinking about that today, weirdly.
We brought up in conversation today. TikTok is terrifying.
I thought it'd be a good time to show my kids, man. They were just fucking running out the room like, what is this, with the heads coming off and stuff?
And there's terror hands with wheels on their feet.
The Wheelers, they are dark, man. The whole film's dark as fuck. I remember seeing it when I was about 5 or something, and the bit you're on about where she's taking her head off and she's got the kind of rows, the display cases of heads down that corridor.
Whoa.
I went and hid behind the couch, man.
No wonder that was our generation's Dalek right there, man.
Well, I mean, the kids have watched Wizard of Oz, and they've watched like the Great Oz, the prequel.
And
they
like
also,
that's an alright film, but the guy is so badly cast. He's just like this pure cheesy, like.
I know.
I can't handle that guy. Oh,
they watched the cartoons as well, and then they were like, "Can we watch Return to Oz?" And I was like, "No, that's Nightmare Fuel." And Matthew's my son, was like, "How is it Nightmare Fuel?" I was just like, "It just is, Matthew. There's no way to explain it to you."
Don't you love that about those like late 80s, early 90s films, though, like Labyrinth and like all those films that were just like, "Here, kids, shit yourself, all right, welcome to life."
On that note, so I found out a thing today, totally off subject, but so see in Never End the Story.
Yes.
Right, so you know how at the start where the Artax or Artax in the name of the horse, so the horse is in the mud thing and it dies, you know what I mean? Spoiler.
Yeah,
spoiler. Spoiler for those who have not seen a movie from 1983 or whatever. But so see when the horse got trapped in there, they were talking about it on a podcast.
By the way, I've got a hefty fucking level with you. I've never seen any Never Ending Story film.
Right,
well, only one more watching anyway.
So you've ruined it for me, Paul.
No, because it's literally the very, very, very first thing that happens in the movie. But anyway, the horse gets stuck in mud and the horse essentially dies. But it turns out that when they were filming, all right, it's the first thing that happens in the story when he goes to the Never Ending Story place. Anyway, the horse is stuck in mud and essentially it's sinking, it's dying. The kid who is trying to get the horse out of the mud at the time, when they were filming that, he broke his back and his leg. The child he broke his back and his leg. That's because see in the 80s and those things didn't matter. It's like, throw the kid in the sinking sand. Throw the kid in the
deal with it, all right. We're trying to make a film here.
Throw the kid. Oh, my back! Get back on that fucking flying dragon. Shut.
Do you think there's an element where the media we're making for kids nowadays, though, is like a wee bit too anodyne and it doesn't have enough darkness?
Break your backs, Jerry. I hear what you're saying. Break your fucking backs.
I think there's a line in between that I think people like maybe early Jim Henson and stuff kind of covered quite well that we've maybe lost now a wee bit. I don't know, like it all depends on the culture, doesn't it? I think there's probably like, there's this like theory about how kids don't play now, like they're because of the way we're told to parent them, we restrict them from self-managed play, so they don't like when I was away and I was swinging off ropes into the Pollock River, when I was telling my mum I was at my pal's house and stuff like that, like you do stuff that would make you die if you thought your kids were doing them. Like we used to scale the top window of my mum's house out of my bedroom and like literally dreep it across the top window into my brother's bedroom and stuff like that, but they think like that's been taken away and for kids because of the whole kind of mass media like 90s stuff about kids being kidnapped and murdered and everyone look after your kids, watch out, and because of that we've kind of lost the ability to accept that it's okay to be afraid, it's okay to feel danger, feel fear. So it's a product, I think, of that in the long run, which is a problem. It's a problem.
When they get to adulthood and whatever, and like life,
and just
life
what you just want your mum. When you should be looking after yourself.
Well, because of the age of mine, like I've noticed, like there's a massive juxtaposition between, see, if you look at something like American or British TV, like and what they produce for kids, and then you look at something like anime in Japan. Like, so my boy and girl watch anime sometimes, and it's like, well, this is needlessly brutal and violent. But then in hindsight, probably isn't any more violent than what I was watching growing up. Do you know what I mean? It's just in comparison to what they are now being presented,
Even
it seems
like,
absurdly brutal.
I think that's a good point, man. And obviously, it's a different culture, and anime is so ingrained in like the kind of aesthetic of that culture. And then what about like even stuff like Power Rangers? My wee boy loves it. And see if you go back and watch Mighty and Morphin Power Rangers, right? Which is absolute trash of the highest caliber. But like back then, at least it felt like they were hitting each other, like there was something happening. Now it's like Megaforce toys from 5 miles away, fake wheelies. It's just like,
they just get their,
basically a big advert for whatever crap they're fucking selling.
they just get their watch out and they send a horribly worded tweet to the enemies. Hashtag like at their maw in it, and then they just, that's where it goes, you know what I mean?
Fuck, that is a possibility. That is
Power Rangers Twitter force.
we went way off piece there, like fucking straight away. But I've never seen Neverending Story. The Return to Oz is fucking terrifying. Like,
have you ever seen The Dark Crystal?
It was Jim Henson, was it? Not?
It was Jim Henson. I was the only reason that I'm bringing that they made a new Jim. So this was back to something that you had said, Becky. Who are they? Like, so they've made a new Dark Crystal, right? And it's essentially a kids program. But who are they aiming it for? Because technically, the only people who are watching it are our generation that's seen Dark Crystal the first time. I mean, there's no kid that's just like, quality, some puppets on TV. That's what I'm looking for. Do you know what I mean?
And then we'll go like that to our kids. Here, watch this. This is brilliant. I used to watch this. And then we'll be like, this is shite now.
This is garbage.
Well, it's just a waste of time, basically, is what it's saying. Yeah.
Are you? I mean, your brains are probably still a wee bit young for this, but like I recently watched the first Star Wars with my eldest, and like there was bits of it where he was like properly excited. But so for me, one of the things that I was most buzzing about, right, was showing him the first 3 Star Wars films was like the big fucking twist where you find out Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's dad. And like literally the first thing that my fucking 5-year-old boy said to me when Luke Skywalker came on screen was like, "Is that Luke Skywalker? Darth Vader's his dad." That's
it. Boom. Right, son. Cool. Well, that's the end of that then. Sweet. I think it's kids know everything, don't they? There's nothing you can teach them. But then I think movies have got more and more predictable. Like, you know, Tenet was supposed to be this pure, hard to understand movie. And like me and Darren went to see it in the pictures, and within 2 seconds I was like, that's him, by the way. He's fighting himself, and that's why he's ran away. And cool, that's it. Sorry if you've not seen Tenet.
Tenet's the new what's his name? Is it not him?
Christopher Nolan, isn't it?
Christopher Nolan, thank you. Yes,
right, okay. I'll know to see that too.
I bet you didn't think we'd spend the first 10 minutes of this talking about films.
I didn't, but I'm digging it.
Welcome in not another fake film cast with Paul and Jerry, with our special guest Becky. That's what we're doing today.
Another 80s kid film.
Not another one.
So given that you like Kate Bush, right, but that's who you think that's like quite an easy fucking go to. Who are the folk that you kind of would consider to be like your musical heroes and shit?
Oh man, it's like right, okay, I'll try and keep it brief, right? I mean, I could do it chronologically, but I think I will not, because it takes too long. But like in terms of female singers and like female artists, like I like everything from, like I loved, funnily enough, Judy Garland when I was a kid, you know, like I loved that. I just liked it. And I think that ties in with the way I write, even though it's so fundamental and early, because she's like this pained, tortured soul, you know, and like I really connected with her. It was like, this is the narrative I want for my life, pained, tortured soul. and then I've pure got into obviously the Carpenters, because my mum listened to that, right? Obviously I'm not that old, but my mum listened to that. But then as I got older, I just totally died for Skunk Anansie first and foremost. I just got so into Skin and just so into that kind of music, and it was, you know, I was just at the kind of right age for it. I was ripe for it. I was like 16, you know, and then just like and she was so angry and everything. She sang, felt so emotional. So I loved that shit. And then I found Joni Mitchell and Jeff Buckley and like all these kind of more lyrical style writers. So then like I think there's a wee bit of all of that in what I do. And for me, like if I'm like I do a lot of songwriting, tutoring and whatever. And for me, bass camp is always lyrics and melody. Like so it does, and I don't care what genre. That's just what matters to me, you know. So I like everything, man. From like Radiohead to Elbow to Skunk Anansie to Linkin Park to anything that's just like, you know, System of a Down or, you know, anything at all that's...
Essentially, she's got a very similar music taste to us. Same stuff.
I just think like every genre's got... There's stuff in every genre that's high bar. Like really, really high bar, and like I used to be a lot more fresh. Oh, there's shit. Like there's fucking shit in every genre as well. You know, hip hop, man. Some of the best lyricism in the world exists in hip hop, and some of the most ridiculous crap exists in it as well. Like,
hey,
want to get that fucking Gucci gang out of my face, man. That is like all that shit makes me angry. But anyway, so I guess everything really. But in terms of lyricism, I think I most fell in love with like your Joni Mitchells and your Jeff Buckleys and Tim Buckley and all that stuff. And then in terms of singers, I think Skin was always like an archetype. And I met her once, right? I've seen her play hundreds of times. Or Muse as well, loved Muse. But anyway, try and stay to one thing, Becky. So I've seen her.
I'm going to say something that's going to ruin Muse for you when you're finished this.
the thing that absolutely ruined Muse for me forever.
Like. Okay, cool, right. I can't wait, man. I went to a guy I was dating at one point years ago, took me a Pivo and Skunk Anansie were doing a private gig. 40 people were there.
No way.
Fucking amazing, man. I think I was about 22, 23 and I had followed her, and I used to work for DF, so I'd done a lot of work at Tea Park and stuff. So I would
people in Edinburgh?
No, people in Waterloo Street in Glasgow.
Glasgow.
It's not there anymore, I don't think.
No, I don't think
it's not there anymore. I like had my songbook. I think I've still got her autograph somewhere, man. That is near me right now, actually. And I had my and we all got to meet her, but I just became a shriveling mess. Like I didn't expect it to happen. I was like in my head, I'm going to go up to her, I'm going to show her, I'm going to ask her to sign my songbook, and I'm going to be like, look, you do not know how much you've influenced me. I'm a writer, I'm a singer, and I just respect you, and I just, you know, I want you to know that, and I want you to know how important you are, like your band have been for me. And I just like literally put my book out and went, like I couldn't even I don't know what book it is, man. I wonder if I can find it, because it was such a fucking like the most ready moment of my life probably. And I've got a picture with them where like they're behind me and I'm just like this. Like, and it just froze, man. Like, aye. So that was.
There was just so much you wanted to say that it just came out like a fucking noise.
Aye.
Well, a cool thing that we managed to do, and it kind of happened by chance. We interviewed a guy who was actually an author for a book to do with Europe during the Falklands War, essentially. Like, during the Falklands War. That's a lie. During like the kind of breakup of the USSR and all the stuff that happened in like Bosnia and stuff like that. Like during that time of the world.
Right.
Was it the Falklands War? But he also worked for Jim Henson, but he also wrote a song with Jeff Buckley.
Oh, wow.
That was exactly my reaction. It's just like, we're interviewing.
He was a character.
Yes.
That's about 12 years old. Setting up your old book. I keep all my old books, man. They're everywhere.
That's cool.
You're a riot. But how's that going to ruin Muse for me, though?
Right, okay, so here's the thing about Matt Bellamy, and actually, like, as somebody who does music production and all that, you've maybe just fucking noticed this already, but after somebody pointed this out to me, I find them really difficult to listen to, and that's as somebody who was, like, right on board when Showbiz came out and that, loved Origin of Symmetry. Like, somebody pointed this out to me, and I've just found them almost impossible to listen to since then.
It may well have been me, by the way, because
it's that you, all the way through every Muse song, you hear him taking deep, sharp breaths before every fucking line. Like, so, once you've heard it, you can't unhear it. It's fucking
it's painful.
And you end up focusing on it so fucking much. So I'm sorry if I have ruined Muse for you, but I feel like They were ruined for me, so why
should you pass it on, man? Pass on and ruin. Well, maybe you have. I'll need to listen back. I mean, I was so deadly impressed by their live gigs that I don't know if I give a fuck about the briefing, but then when you click into something that's annoying, it never leaves you. It's like if there's a twang in a voice or like something that you just can't get behind at all, man, then I'll check it out. I'll check that out.
It's just like, I feel like it shouldn't be there. I feel like it should have been fixed, you know.
Are you
anyway.
a producer?
No.
No, like, but we were both singers in bands.
We're very much still learning this on the hoof. Like you done a bit.
I done music industry management at Stowe, and we both. I done Electric Honey Records at Stowe College a long time ago now, and me and Jerry were also singers in bands. So I've got a demo kick about somewhere, and I'm sure Jerry has as well. So, but that's
tape today.
Oh, right, but you should insert your demo here when this goes live, and also the Matt Bellamy clip because I want to see if it's just.
It's so upsetting.
They are a cracking band. Like Newborn, I fucking loved Newborn. I love the fact that he's like clearly such a massive Tom Morello for Rage Against the Machine fan as well. Like some of the riffs are fucking class. Like.
And a Jeff Buckley fan.
Oh, aye. Like, hugely.
Right, so you said you like Tim Buckley, right?
Oh,
so random question. So I love this song.
That's my favourite one, in case you wonder.
So like I love Tim Buckley, right? And my favourite Tim Buckley song is Dolphins.
Oh,
right?
Beautiful.
But and then I also love Eddie Reader's cover of Dolphins. Have you heard Eddie Reader doing Dolphins?
I've not. No, I'll need to.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. It's because I grew up like my dad was a massive Tim Buckley fan, and then it was a Jeff Buckley fan. So then I was a massive Jeff Buckley fan. But then on top of that, it's that whole sad story where you've got like the son and the father, and they both died like so young and so talented. So young and so talented, both of them.
I think Tim Buckley, I think, was a product of the age, though, in terms of his records. Like he got a bit too much freedom. I think he went off the kind of dark side a little bit, 12-minute songs and stuff like that. But I only know about him because I was so in love with Jeff Buckley. Another guy that I was dating back then had gotten me into Jeff Buckley years and years ago. And I was like, oh my God, and I wish I could see this guy live, right? And then he was like, he's dead, man. And I was like, what? So I got this book called Dream Letter. And then I read that book, and that's how I found out about Tim Buckley. And then I just went back and searched. And the thing I loved about it most was that there was and Dream Letter is it Dream Brother is an answer to that song. And I love the romance of the fact they never knew each other except through music.
Yeah.
So like Tim Buckley sang to him, but never got to see him. And Jeff Buckley only heard his dad's voice for the music. I just loved that. It was so, again, it's that Judy Garland trope, the failed romance of it all. You know, it's just, what a beautiful, sad story. Brilliant, man.
The book you're on about is the one that kind of tells the story of both of their lives.
That's right, yeah. Well. I found it really engaging as a piece of writing, like, and as an actual real story, it's just mental. But I love that line and Dream Brother into it, where he's if you've read the book, you'll know. But the story is that he's working with a guy at the studio, and the guy at the studio and him have gotten close, and the guy at the studio has told him, Jeff Buckley, that he's going to leave his wife and child. And then, so Jeff Buckley's like, don't be like the one that made me so old, talking about his dad. Don't be like the one that left behind his name, because they're waiting for you. Like I waited for Mada and nobody ever came. Honestly, it makes me want to cry even thinking about it. So it's such a beautiful line, man.
Actual goosebumps.
Yeah.
We're all going to be writing songs tonight, pens and papers.
Aye, I'm croaky, man. Croaky. I can't write. I can write, but I can't sing now. I've got my Phoebe Buffet with a cold voice now.
So obviously, as somebody who kind of teaches music and stuff like that, then you're kind of writing from the point of view that you understand musical theory and all that quite well. No,
I can't read
music.
No, I teach theoretical songwriting. So I teach songwriting which is underpinned by broad concepts. So
that's cool. But I like that because there's loads of stuff. I'm no somebody who can read music and that. Paul can, but I'm heavy into so there's this guy. If you ever watch Rick Beato has a YouTube channel. like where he does. He's like a Connects music producer who's produced loads of like really like top level like 90s kind of grunge and rock music. But one of the things that he does on his channel is called "What Makes This Song Great." And he like kind of breaks down, sort of looks at a lot of the theoretical stuff and whatever. And I've been watching it a lot recently, so I'm kind of learning loads of things that like I didn't know about songs that I loved already. But one thing that I noticed listening to you that I'd kind of picked up for him talking about is there's a lot of dissonance in your melodies and stuff like that. Like you take the melody a place that I wasn't expecting it to go, but it's like contrasting with the kind of bass kind of notes and chords and stuff in there, and it gives that kind of wrenching like emotional feel to the music. Like, so the reason I was got to ask is because I wondered if that was something that you done deliberately, or if it's
I guess it is deliberate, but it's not deliberate based on theory. I know it's going to sound totally corny, but it's deliberate based on feeling. Like, so like a lot of my early singing would have been really oral and a cappella, because my mum like loved singing, and she's a beautiful singer, my mum. But she loved harmonies, and she taught me really early on, and I was obsessed with harmony. So like I'm one of those really annoying people that will like sing harmony to everything, like, and can just get it. And I know it's annoying, I know it is, but I don't care, because it's a power. It's like a superpower, and I'm happy to have it.
It absolutely is. Like, it bugs me because I find it so difficult to not just hear the main melody or something, like to be able to.
I would say the voice is my instrument. It's my instrument, so it has to find a place in the palette of the overall song, and it has to be. I mean, there are some songs where I would intentionally sing really on the bass line, or really too, and those are for different reasons, like does it suit this feeling essentially. But in general, like I always think the best instrument I've got is my voice. I'm not that good at guitarist, I'm not that good at keyboards, I'm good at production and whatever, and I can make things sound cool, but essentially it's a capo one and CGD, you know what I mean? Or I'm finding weird chords that don't actually have names or whatever that I'm just making up on the guitar. So the strength of it for me, as I said, is always in the melody. So I don't go out my way to make sure there's a striking melody, but there's a natural obsession with the harmonics of the melody. Do you know what I mean? Which I find really important. But I don't know what any of that actually means, what I just said.
So I suppose you've been asked that before, but
it sounds good.
Are you and Darren going to do a collaboration album at some point?
So we did. I done a lot of writing on GIMP, Government Issue Music Pros. I was about to say project there, which is what people always call it as protest, but we have a laugh because people always go, Government Issue Music Project. That's not a music project. It's not like
Government Issue Music Project sounds like your young Scot scheme.
Right.
So like I wasn't got to bring Darren up at all, but the fact that you just have, we should probably let folk know that it's Darren McGarvey that we're talking about here.
Aye, it is, man, it is. We do try and keep our creative lives a little bit separate, because we're both obviously in our field, we're doing our thing, and I'm much more obviously based in a melodic world, and also I do a lot more academia clearly not academic stuff. Like I do a lot more tutoring and lecturing, and Darren obviously is a public speaker, and he does a lot, he's based in the rap world, and we have crossovers of course, and obviously just silly things like I'll record his vocals for him, or I'll put a hook in something or whatever, but it's kind of like that Beyonce Jeezy overkill thing. I don't think we want that to happen. So we do collaborations now and again. We used to do, when I was pregnant with Daniel, my first, we toured a bit that year with a really stripped back acoustic version of GIMP. And we had a violinist, just me, Darren, and a violinist, which was lovely. And then we did a big show at the Barras a couple of years ago, which was an absolute belter of a show. So we do collaborate, and we are talking about doing a collaboration again. But I think he's been really great in kind of understanding that. For instance, I'll not name any names, but there was my whole album's about like the very specific experience of being a woman who had already started to make a wee name in the industry, and because I decided obviously to have a baby, that stopped, and it was this really, really, really quick and sudden adjustment that we made. And my husband Darren, his adjustment was to be as successful as he could be to look after us. So he went and became obviously a really famous writer, which has been amazing. But there is this kind of underpinning, not now, but at the time when all that was happening, there was a real underpinning of like, do you know how when like you're jealous of somebody, but you pure shouldn't be because you're happy for them and jealous at the same time? But it was more based around like, you know, the freedom of his new positions. He was touring all over Britain, all over, you know, Europe, and then the isolation of that position. So I did do one show after I'd had Lily where somebody introduced me as Darren's missus. And like, oh my God, is a friend of mine as well. And if you're listening to this, you know who you are, you fucker. But like, it was a bit annoying. So we do try and keep things separate. But we're totally there. Like, if it wasn't for Darren, I wouldn't have been able to get this album off the ground in terms of just having the time to write. So his time's taken away a lot because he's obviously a personality and blah, blah, blah. But in return for that, for me, when he's here, he lets me have my time. So I go out a studio, like I could be away till 1. I mean, I'm up till like 3 a.m, like working, writing, marking papers, like all that shit that I need to do, man. And that's thanks to him. So that is my partner, and we have a great partnership, you know. You kind of back each other up. That
takes me on to the next question that I was curious about. So did you record, so because you said you were in the studio, so did you record in the studio or did you record lots of stuff at home in a home studio type scenario?
Bit of everything, man. So I'd written a lot. So a couple of the songs, like there's a song called Swan Song, a song called Focus on the album, and I actually wrote both of them on my loop pedal. So by the time I'd recorded them, I had played them live a lot already because I had written them. Right. Because I didn't have time to write for a while, I was doing this mad experimental live stuff where I was just like recording on a loop pedal live and fucking about and all that. And so those songs came out of that. So those 2 songs were kind of in the bank a wee bit. And then other songs were written and whatever. And then our mate Astronomic and Sev K, they have a studio in the city centre. And me and Darren started to kind of let it out specifically so that we could use it. So I had the keys to that. So I would disappear at like, I would take my Pro Tools and all that down and my iLock and everything and my mic and just like go down there and record when I could and try and get like a demo or 2 a go. But the whole process of that took it about fucking 8 months, man, because it was just like if and when I could, you know. It became quite ritualistic in a way. Like I would go down there, I had a ritual when I was down there, make a coffee, do a few tunes, do a bit of yoga, like totally fucking ridiculous stuff. But it really helped me focus, ironically. And then the rest of it would just, so then I would take that, the framework for it. So all my vocals I tried to record there. Obviously, after lockdown, I had to make some sacrifices. And it's funny because you can actually hear in some of the songs, my kids have been mixed into the songs. You wouldn't know unless you know that that's what it is. You hear this like wee, and it's like, because one of them's fucking shouting in the other room.
But it kind of fits in really like we can some of the themes and stuff like that anyway. So it's like creates a cool soundscape to it, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure, man.
So you'd mentioned earlier to us, I think off mic, that you've started doing a PhD now as well. So what is it you're studying?
Do you want to know the full title of it? So
fuck it, why not, man?
It's Hip Hop Pedagogy as Early Intervention for Young People in Mainstream and Community Education. But basically,
all right, okay.
I'd be going with something a bit catchier personally, but you know, each to their own.
Basically, I'm arguing that so there's a framework for schools. I won't go in, and I know I don't want to talk about this too much, but it's a music PhD. And I'm really like I've carved out a wee bit of a freelance career as obviously it's I'm fucking holding now as a community artist and songwriter specifically. But I think like a lot of, partly to do with where I'm from, probably, so my own personal experiences, and probably partly to do because of how I talk as well. Like, I've ended up working a lot with young men specifically, and young people who are either have been expelled from school but are not able to start work yet, so around about that age, or are interfacing in one way or another with a signposted community organisation. So like I use songwriting all the time, and we write songs, and we do lots of stuff, and it's all about like personal engagement development, and also emotional literacy, and like building up other ways to say things. But obviously a lot of the time these young people, hip hop's just a real, it works best with them because it is most relatable to their language. And actually I find that what the misunderstanding with a lot of the young people that are taken out of standard school is actually their language. It's a snobbery to do with language, and a prevention of people from using what they know as language to express themselves. And what that creates is hostility, and then that leads to bigger trouble, and then these kids get chucked out of school. And so I really love working with hip hop because it just gives free rein for language to be used with these young people. And then from that, it's made me realise that so there's what all our kids interface with school or will. So there's the Scottish Curriculum for Excellence, which is actually meant to be really progressive, and it's got a really underlying progressive principle, which is if your child is struggling to do this within the normal framework of the curriculum, we can find other ways to let your child do the same thing and be accredited for it. So it's a really progressive principle, but it is not used that way. It just isn't, because teachers don't have time, there's no funding, they've not got time to open up a school shop to help 14-year-olds with numeracy, but they could actually do something like that. So my idea is to basically create a package of hip-hop learning which can be rolled out like from 12-year-old right up until leaving age of school, and that be used as a kind of Trojan horse to work across curriculums: English, drama, literature, like arts, music, obviously, music tech. There's so much that you can do just by giving someone free rein to use their language to rhyme. Like, it's ridiculous, man. Like, without trying to get them to do...
Sorry.
No, I'm just going to bitch about fucking poetry now, but it's cool. No, it doesn't matter.
But like there is examples of stuff like that kind of being used with like the violence reduction units and stuff like that. Like
but what? So this is it. So I'm talking about early intervention. So what you see a lot,
younger folk.
Yeah, you see a lot of examples of that kind of really helpful practice being normalised after people have already taken a step towards a more difficult life for themselves, And so the idea is that if we open up, so really it could be any music, it doesn't need to be hip hop, but if you open up the way that we look at music, which used to be about community, like before the fucking commercial music industry existed, music was about community, it was about sharing, about telling stories, about teaching moral lessons, all that shit, it's been out the window.
Folk music.
Folk music just means local music, really, doesn't it? But like, so until we had this, music had a different purpose. So it's about reintroducing the purpose of music as something to help people actually develop and understand and learn and share. So that's what it's about, man. But I'm right in the start of it, and fuck knows how it'll go. The good thing is that I don't know if you know Stanley Odd, but Dave Hook is my supervisor, so he's like a total legend. So hopefully he'll steer me in the right direction.
See, it's weird because you touched on a few things there to do with like the snobbery and language and the way it's used. And we interviewed the LaFontaines, and Kerr was saying, obviously they do their rap as well, and Kerr was saying that one of the biggest things he had to overcome was teaching himself that it was okay for him to rap as someone from Scotland, because their first plethora of songs and his first incarnation doing rap, he was rapping with a pseudo-American accent because he didn't know how else. I mean, he even says in the interview, like, he didn't know how else rap was to sound. Do you know what I mean? And I think it certainly helped. The explosion of grime in London certainly helped, because suddenly you then had British sounding people who sounded British, who sounded quintessentially English, rather than who sounded like the Wu-Tang Clan or Tupac. Do you know what I mean? Like, essentially, like you had this
back closer to home.
Yeah, you had an accent that you could define as an accent. Do you know what I mean?
You've got quite a few more now, like and folk who are starting to get names for themselves, like Shogun, like Ransom, and like Stanley Odd. I'm sure I've heard a couple of.
They did that song "Son, I Voted Yes," which was really big.
Yes, aye, that's right. That's the one I've heard. But yeah, so there are kind of slight archetypes for folk to relate to now, like, which makes it all the more easier for the next generation and stuff.
I think as well, it's just because it's a really, really young culture. Like, it's not, it's the 1973, when hip hop was invented. So it's not like, although a lot of music, and what I mean by music is musicking, like using instruments and making lyrics and all that. That's an age-old tradition, but hip hop was born of obviously a lot of different musics, but it's a kind of new culture. And so you talk, like, in singing a lot, you talk about how, like, the first thing you do is mimic, right? No matter what you do. So you mimic the Americana, which fucking just totally is insipid in our society. So you mimic that. But as the culture grows and develops, the underpinning, like, social consciousness of that culture is so relevant in different cultures that it becomes like, there was a massive Turkish hip hop scene and there's a massive French hip hop scene, and it's underpinned
French hip hop scene's great.
Their specific culture, because that's the ethos of hip hop. It's like speaking about your experience. So it's like people always say it's like to give a voice, but communities have already got a voice. It's just a way to articulate an experience, which is much more accessible, I think.
Exactly is the word I was going to use. Yeah, it's way more accessible to folk who, maybe aren't prepared to, like, stand up in front of somebody and start, like, belting out a fucking musical number, like,
man, I
bringing scales and shit.
Like, this isn't really miss, right? But we've not got time for that shit, But actually, I think that's what I like. What you were saying there's a really good point about, like, localized forms of hip hop and how they're becoming much more not just accepted, but like loved, like people like Shogun and obviously Darren and all these rappers from Scotland, but then like people like K Tempest, and then obviously the underground drill scene, like in London and stuff, like all that stuff, people can relate directly to it. It's like, it's them they can hear. I think that there was I'll not bore you with this because I know we're not here to talk about studies, but like years ago there was like something.
So a bit. You talk about studies all you want.
It's like a study about the Arctic monkeys, essentially, and how they kind of made it fashionable again to sing in colloquial language, and actually how that very, very slight aesthetic decision turned into the renaissance of local scenes in a big way. You know what I mean? Like, people, like, all these bands came out and you could hear where they were from. Like the Beatles back in the day, like.
Aye. And like the 70s kind of punk scene, like, had a lot of that. You had like the Sex Pistols, the Jam and stuff that were singing in accents. I think the thing with the Arctic, because me and Paul were actually literally just talking about Arctic Monkeys before we came on this, because we were talking about singing in local accents and stuff. And they not only sang in their own accent, but they also poked fun at people who didn't, like that song.
Right, I know.
Fake Tales of San Francisco, where like, you're not from New York City, you're from Rotherham, so fucking get off the bandwagon.
Absolutely.
Get off the bandwagon and put down the handbook.
Absolutely, man. And here, tell the fucking truth. I mean, I sing in my Scottish accent kinda now. I was brought up in musical theatre, so I was always like hardcore. I dreamed a dream, like fucking, with that kind of style of singing. But I do sing much more in my natural accent now. But it's actually hard to do it when you first start doing it, and you feel fake. How fucking horrible is that? That you feel fake about your own culture. That's how Americanized we've become, to the point where we're not okay with sounding like us because it doesn't sound right because media
Yeah,
doesn't
we get that
have
pure
it.
I don't-
Scottish cringe thing.
See, I don't think I can sing in a Scottish accent because I'm much like you, Becky. So I was taught to sing. Like, so I was taught to sing musical theatre style. Taught to sing. So enunciate your words. It's actually something that I was talking. We were literally what we were talking about with the Arctic Monkeys. I'm fine with accents, but it really grinds at me when people in their accent over enunciate words, so they create a word that's got like one syllable and it becomes three syllables. You know what I mean? Like girl.
No,
You know what I mean? You've like put in U's and R's and stuff all over the place. Yeah, it kills me because I was always taught that you sing for the syllable. The syllable is me and Jenny were talking about is it's your note. Do you know what I mean? So then creating this, like I said, girl is the one that really drives me because like that's GURUL. Yeah. Larv. Yeah, but that's
or live. It sounds like Laura, like
R's and O's that have randomly put in.
It's called pitch singing. Like a lot. I don't know if probably none of the people that I tutor will hear this, but it's fucking annoying, man. Like just sing. Like I can't.
Exactly.
And of course, if your voice comes out American, that's great. Do whatever the fuck you want, you know. But it's about like finding, and I think that's just to hark back to the album. Like I think like that's the importance that I always try and carry into the music that I release. Not only the music that I write, but the music that I release, because it has to feel like it's you. Like no matter what that sounds like, you can't get an emotion across if you're putting something on top of it. Know what I mean? Unless you're a really good actor, which I'm not.
But be genuine, be you, like, you know, be true to yourself type of thing. And like, I'm not to fucking suck up your arse or anything like that, but like you can 100% hear the emotion, like, and feel that like what you're singing and the music on present tense is genuine. It's from the heart. Like you can connect to it and like feel that, like, whatever, like longing, pain, fucking different emotions all the way through it, but it's there, man, and it's like, it's clear to hear because you obviously have been true to yourself when you've been writing and performing it. And like, yeah, like you say, it's no over the top, listen to me, I'm pure Scottish here, but like there's certain words and stuff, the inflections on it, like you know, like sailing, for example, like, you know, when you sing the word sailing, you can hear the Scottishness in it and stuff. And I think it's cool. It's got your own stamp on it.
That's quite a Celtic-y sounding bit of music, that bit. It's probably seeping into my consciousness without knowing it, you know. It's funny, like Darren was just talking about this because like he obviously, like he gets wheeled out a lot as like an example of, you know, working class people are smart kind of thing, as if that's you know, like it gets,
which must be really fucking annoying.
It's really annoying, like, and so I won't get into too much detail because I think this isn't something that's not released yet. But there was somebody that was commenting on how when he wanted to make a point, he would pronounce his T's, but the rest of the time he wouldn't. And I thought it's a really interesting thing about language, and it translates over to singing as well. Is this kind of the phonology of it all, like the subconscious accents that we put on words and phrases and thoughts to make it feel a certain way. And there's a level of naturalism in it, but there's also a level of scriptedness in that, you know, and we've all got it. I'm talking right now in a specific way, you know, that like we all do it. It's like everything that comes out your mouth, vocal sounds, is a performance. So you kind of state your case with it. But essentially what this person was saying was like that there was no way that if you have got this kind of voice, like a working class Glaswegian voice, essentially, that you will ever be seen as anything but that, like, which is really interesting. And I would like to refute it, essentially, emotionally, especially when I sing, you know, because I think, you know, you can dig into any emotion with the right thought process behind it. I think, you know, even if you've got a mad Glaswegian voice.
It's Tuesday afternoon and I've been thinking of your face, all the pain that you've erased from me and every struggle you've had. And I truly believe you only see the best in me, although I wrestle with the notion I could never give you all you need. long ago when I moved fast and you moved slow. I swore I'd never let you go, and you would always have a friend in me.
100%. Like,
well, at least you don't have a Glasgow Uni accent, you know what I mean? So good to
I
the
went to
bad, really,
Glasgow
isn't
Uni.
it?
I lasted, well, I took 5 years to do a 3-year ordinary degree. I was there about 6 times. I was going through my hedonism stage, let's just say. It was a bad look for me.
Weirdly enough, I didn't go to Glasgow Uni, but I spent a lot of time going through my hedonism stage at Glasgow Uni.
Why am I in this Exploring the Cosmos class, man? Why is there a John Malkovich door here, man? I got it. It's fucked up.
It was journalism for me, and I didn't go to enough classes either. Like,
I think that's the thing as well. Like, I'll be telling my kids they're not going anywhere near a university unless A, they really, really want to, or B, they've had a wee bit of life experience, because I left school at 15, man. I didn't do any further education, much to the upset of my teachers at the time, but I was on my own wee path, and it involved a lot of weed for a start. That's just like not part of school. And so I went my own way about it, man. But when I finally got my hires, I was like 21, and I did good, man. I did really good, really, really good. And so I was like, well, I better go. I got into like St Andrews and Glasgow and all that. And I thought, I better go and do English literature, because that's academic, and I could be a poet and that. Yeah. Because I didn't care. And it was Darren, actually, funnily enough, about 12 years ago, that was like, here, why don't you go and do a commercial music or performance or something that you actually like? Degree. And that was it. Click, click, click. My whole life clicked into place when I stopped trying to be a graduate snob.
I had this, like, so at 18, so it was like kind of still relatively early years of the Blair fucking government, you know what I mean? And it was this big push for school leavers to go to university, you know, like, we're going to hit like 70% of school leavers going to uni. And I was the first person in our family, I think, to go to university, probably, like, at that time. I don't think did you
no, my dad would have been the only variable in that scenario. So
cool, okay.
And my dad was he went to school at a time when, you know, you had the clever school and the stupid school in the nicest possible way. Do you know what I mean? You had whatever they called it, the technical school, and going to actually learn with the intention to go to university. Okay. So my dad was the prodigal son, if you will, that went to that school from the arse end of Coltness, you know what I mean, where there was like 900 Waynes living in a house that had 2 bedrooms and that type of shit. So but I don't think he didn't go to uni for his degree. So you'd have been the first one out of all of us that went to uni.
But I didn't have a fucking clue. I did well at school and all that, but I didn't have a fucking clue what I wanted to do with my life. Like, didn't have a fucking half an idea. But everybody in the world was telling me I had to go to uni, you know. I might say to my dad, can I not just take a year out? Like, and I actually, mainly because I was in a band at the time and we were kind of doing all right, and I wanted to fucking do a bit of that and just think about what I actually wanted to do for a wee while. And it was like, no, you take a thought. I remember my dad's actual words to me, because like, my dad's just a fucking grafter, you know, like, he just worked his whole life. I was like, can I not take a year out? He's like, year out? You want to take a fucking year in? Like, you get your ass to uni, or you can fucking get a job. I was like, all right, okay, right, I'll just go to uni then, you know what I mean?
That's beautiful, man. That's top notch answer to that. Beautiful.
So that was me. So I opened up a fucking what'd you call it?
Prospectus. My God, Jerry, you've done journalism at university.
I opened up a prospectus and went, journalism, I'll do that. And just went,
just like closed your eyes and opened up at G and went, fuck it.
Like, I was quite good at English and all that, and I liked the idea of being it, but I thought, I could write in Q magazine. I could be like,
well, you still could. There's still time, and also, you know, things that are.
I'm an engineer now. I took a totally different path. I know what you mean.
It makes sense.
Like,
Q magazine's not going to exist by the end.
Q magazine doesn't exist. Q magazine.
Oh no. So that's
old as fuck, man. References to Q magazine and back when Tony Blair was still cutting up.
Tony Blair was cutting a bit.
He was still in the early years. He was fucking.
He was the man. It was
He hadn't even.
I was there, man. That's right. Yeah.
He never even. He hadn't even absolutely committed a whole plethora of war crimes at that point, Jerry. That was a different time.
No, that was one of the defining moments of my first year at uni. Was marching against the Iraq War.
Do you know what? That's so good. And do you know what? It kind of feels like candy floss activism now, doesn't it? Like, I guess for those that were already seasoned activists back then, it didn't feel like that. But for me, like at the time, that was my first experience, like the March for Poverty and all that stuff that happened around then before 9/11. After 9/11, before 7. Oh fuck, the other one that happened.
Before 7, 10.
7, 12.
Oh,
no,
7/11.
7, 10. 7, 10.
7. It was the 7th of July.
Before that, because that was. Remember Bob Geldof was pure like, make poverty history, we can do this. And him and Midge and all that had the big march, and they had like 1 million people marching on Edinburgh. And that was the day before that happened.
Is that not the...
I remember.
Is that not when he done the whole speech about when he's doing the clapping, and he's like, every time I clap, a child dies, and somebody in the audience, and somebody shouted, "Stop fucking clapping!"
It's like they're just yeah, it is what it is, man. But when you're young, you're just like, yeah. Plus, there's tons of weed. Let's do this, and then and now now. Things were terrible then and always will be slightly terrible somewhere, but things feel like there's so much more happening now. I don't even know where to go. Like, I don't know where to go to be active anymore. It's too much.
But the world definitely feels like it's got a hell of a lot worse over the last 15 years. Like, it's no... Like, I feel like the trajectory of history as we were kind of taught it to a certain extent at school was that, like, things were kind of always improving. And I know that's like... Looking back, that's obviously not the case because you had Thatcherism, you had the miners' strikes, you had a lot of bad shit in the 70s and 80s, but like certainly the 90s seemed
cushy as fuck.
Well, like late 90s and 2000s.
They were called the roaring 90s, was it? Something like that.
We were riding big bubbles of like, fucking kind of cheap debt and stuff like that, and fucking the housing, like fucking like throwing mortgages at people and that kind of hanging. Everybody was riding high, and then like post 2008, it's just been stated capitalism, right? We've just been we've propped up the banks, but we've now spent the coronavirus propping up big business. We can't come up with money for free school meals unless a Premiership footballer fucking jumps up and down hard enough about it. But we're perfectly happy to and this
bail out EasyJet, bail out fucking Ryanair, bail out companies which within a month prior to the bailout had paid out millions of pounds worth of bonuses to all their board members, and then they went and claimed for money off the government, or they would go under.
That's the social memory of the 90s still exists, right? Which when capitalism was riding shiny and high, and like that's why we put up with this shit now. I mean, like not we, but the world collectively is moving right?
We'll just go back to that.
And we're just, I don't know, it just feels to me like there's been opportunities to rectify certain parts of the system to feed and help others. And collectively, we've chosen to dismiss those opportunities, belittle them, including in America. Fucking you, that Donald Trump's not there, that's great. But I'd have much rather seen Bernie Sanders on that ticket, who actually wanted to do something about big business and corporations, because that's been...
I'd even rather have seen Vanessa Warren.
Elizabeth Warren, sorry. I always had that eye on Harris. I was like, she is quite... I like her. I like Harris. I know she's done a lot of bad shit. But I mean, like, just as a kind of visual aesthetic and attitude, I like her. She's got a kind of like, you might be drunk aunt vibe going on, and I like that about her. Do you know what I mean? Like, just your aunt that would let you get away with shit. I feel like she'd be quite open to challenging a lot of stuff. But Warren and Sanders were obviously the most progressive candidates in terms of sharing some of the deficit of wealth.
But I do think they'd have been harder. I think they'd have been easier to beat for
That's
Trump.
the thing.
They'd have been easier to campaign against, you know.
Or would
Well, I
they? Because
mean,
we'll never know, because it feels like, in a way, like a socialist.
That's in theory.
I think that there's a fear of
But
that agenda, but actually the reason people voted for Trump is because he was so fucking radical in terms of, I mean, not him, he's a fucking... He's a Republican, right? He's not really a Republican, but he's under the fucking umbrella of Republican, and they are pushing all their most right-wing, hateful shit, and he's signing it all off, and they're fucking loving it. But like on the other side, if they'd had someone that was just as radical and just as unlikely a leader, maybe that would have paid off.
Might have been able to offer those people something that they might have bought into, potentially.
I don't want to say people, sorry, man, sorry, you go for it.
No. All I was going to say is there's a conversation that me and Jerry have had before where, and it's actually, I believe, the same issue that Corbyn comes up against, that Starmer, as much as I am not a Starmer fan, but he is probably more likely to be able to achieve, which is you're presenting to a lot of people a man in a suit who looks like a politician, who sounds like a politician, who has a career as a politician, who meets all the criteria. So, like, if you were looking at Trump, it's like you could put an old guy who, in my mind, is the right guy for the job, but he's like going to show up in a fucking sweater or whatever to go and do his talk. Whereas if you show up with like an absolutely ingrained politician, looks like a politician, talks like a politician, dresses like a politician, acts like a politician, then people believe he is a politician.
And got the chat as well, Starmer, like he's a lawyer and he knows how to, like, you know, twist and like in terms of when in Parliament, he knows how to, you know, sound like a good contender and twisting, play on words, catch them out.
I get it. I do.
You're right,
I do.
and that makes me fucking angry because it just shows you that there's a fundamental flaw in the makeup of the system, essentially.
It does. There's things I think as well with Starmer that I'd like. I'm annoyed with some of the things he's not doing at the minute, right? So, big one for me is
not acting like a Tory would be my go-to usually.
But like mainly it's the fact that we've got a situation right now that's in broad daylight. We've got fucking rife corruption. We are doling out public sector contracts to private companies untendered for PPE, for track and trace, for all of these things. They're being given to donors and cronies in broad daylight, like billion pound contracts, £100 million contracts, like on an almost weekly basis. This stuff's happening, and Starmer isn't calling it out in public, in the Houses of Parliament. I understand his sort of premise has been to, like, you know, support the government, but call them out when they're doing wrong. And he's kind of largely kind of done that. And I also think, like, I do think stuff like what happened with Andy Burnham in the North is coordinated. You know, it's not like it's better for that to come from Andy Burnham than it is to come from Keir Starmer, you know, because he's speaking for his own people. But I don't think that those are two separate things. I think that's coordinated within the party, or I would like to think it was. However, I seen fucking Alistair Campbell, one of the architects of New Labour, on TV today, calling out the fact that Keir Starmer isn't saying anything about all this fucking corruption and cronyism that's going on. And I'm asking the same question, like, why the fuck not? Why are you not making more of a thing about that? Because it's an easy stick to beat them with, and it's clearly happening. So why does he not want to talk about it?
I mean, there's two theories, isn't there, man? One is that the Labour ethos is to have a more principled debate about issues, and the other is that in some way, you know, a silent observer because it's beneficial to him too. I mean, there could be lots of reasons. Maybe it's a play, maybe it's a political play, like if you let this go, let it build up, and then fucking shame them to fuck when all this is done. Because once there's a report, if there ever is a fucking report or an investigation at how this has been handled, man, like heads will spin, man, like it's just like heads will roll. But whether or not anyone will be there by then to be held accountable is a different story. I don't know. I think it's always really easy for these, you know, older politicians like John Major, there's another one, like, who are out of power and are able to reflect back on the right way to do things. But it's actually,
he doesn't have anything to lose.
Exactly. Really. But it's it gives a lot of clarity as to how principle and like functioning necessity meet in these places. Do you know what I mean? And like what kind of hill are you willing to die on, and what are you willing to let go to benefit yourself or and your political ambitions, or B, the long-term game. So I don't fucking know. It's ridiculous. The whole thing's a joke as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it is. And the thing, like, so we were talking earlier about state-aided capitalism, essentially, right? And like for me, I look at something like the furlough scheme, which, you know, is broadly like a positive influence on society in the sense that like it's keeping people in wages, it's allowing them to function and feed their kids and all that sort of thing. So like I'm not decrying it totally, but in terms of the way it functions, right, in terms of the way it's set up, you've essentially said to yourself, I need to feed this model of society, which involves people working for companies and the companies doling out wages to these people, right? So it would have been far easier, like, because like the limit's like $2,500 a month, right, or there and thereabouts, I think, roughly speaking, right? That was the most that they would pay anybody. So you could easily, and it would have been far easier to administer, because everybody's got a national insurance number to just go, right, everybody gets $2,500 a month.
Universal basic income, right? Even like I actually,
that's what they've essentially proven.
I agree with that. That's a really good point.
That's my point. My problem is that they actually essentially they created it. They made it so difficult because the actual result of this proves that universal basic income can work and does work and is functional to work.
Logically against it, that they'd rather
they have to create this whole problem.
Businesses.
They create this entire fucked up problem to make the money get dished out, because otherwise, if it was just coming from the government, then the opposition, in theory, Labour would argue the point that why don't we just do this? Because this is not working.
But I mean, I think that it's interesting, because I think that this is me fucking thinking what other people think, so I'm probably wrong. But like the ideological implications versus the personal benefit for these politicians like Boris Johnson and you know, these Tory guys who just don't want it as a feasible option. I think they would like, weirdly, in the back of their mind somewhere, I think they have a utopia where they save society. It's not going to fucking work. But in the front of their mind, I think they've got very selfish interests, because they're driven by a more logical side of their brain that says, if I do A, B, and C, I can make D happen for me, and that's important, kind of thing, you know? So like,
and most of that is about sticking in with big
exactly, and also flattening or silencing a working class murmuring as well. Like, I think if everybody had a universal basic income, contrary to what these fucking idiots try and tell us, which is that nobody would do anything. And see, even if people didn't do anything, so fuck. Like, some people would sit down and they would have their wains and they would have their family and they would do that. And some people would feed their addictions, fair enough. But most people would go out and fucking create something with the knowledge and understanding that they always had enough to get by, and then they would actually add to the industry, they would add to capitalism, they would make it better, they could create a better economy just by not being so fucking, it's like they're only thinking a year ahead. And like somebody said that, compared it to Trump as well today, I can't remember, who was basically just like, the way that these people grift is they're only thinking how to get out of the immediate situation now that makes them look good. So they haven't got a broader option. They haven't got a bigger picture. They probably do not Trump, but, you know, the Tories probably do somewhere deep down have a moral compass, which is telling them that they're trying to do the right thing for society, but they're fucking too invested in the now. What are they gaining, given their pals contracts, like all the ways that
their worldview is different as well. Like their upbringing, for the most part, is usually completely different for like our threes, you know.
Totally. It's really. I mean, we can't even really truly get into that mindset, I guess. You know, in some ways, it's kind of it's almost I don't know, pointless trying to. You know, but what do we do then?
But you actually see it across the board. So we talk about it in media. The problem that you've got in news and in media across the board, and like the BBC and the like, says lots of people who are holding positions and make any decisions have such a different worldview, have a different concept of what the world is. And then in music as well. See if you take something like Spotify and stuff like, or the big record labels, all of them have got money and they're established and they go through universities and they end up in those positions now in the big companies. And then what happens is they have no concept of people making music in their houses, and then the absolute miserable time they've then got having, and Becky can absolutely almost definitely attest to, like when you're on something like Spotify or when you're actually trying to get your music out there, you're now at the whim of people that don't have to answer to anybody and don't even pay any fucking tax, you know what I mean? Like, they're just fucking big faceless corporation now, and that's your only route to market, really. Like, it's like you don't have other options. Like, yes, you can do things, you know what I mean? Well, yes, you can sell things, you can put on Bandcamp.
It's also about being able to afford to not work and to spend your time making music. Like, especially now with the live scene away, like, it's like fucking even worse for working class folk, but
it's tough.
Even before.
And I think everybody's got a cut-off point, which is fair enough. Like, everybody's got only so much they can take, you know? Like, and so, again, I can't remember who said this, but somebody was talking to me the other day, and they angered me because they were like, your creativity should be your side hustle until you make it big. Make money, go and get a job. And that is fair enough, right? Of course, I've got a family. I know that you have to look after your family, you have to look after yourself, you have to pay your rent, you have to pay your dues. But if more onus was put on individual creativity, and that goes right back to the start of what we were talking about, like if as a society, for instance, here's an example of a broken system, right? The Tories are trying to cut, and are successfully cutting, money from the arts and the people who function with arts jobs. So I'm a creative practitioner, right? I spend a lot of my time in communities helping people that wouldn't be fucked if it wasn't for the Tories in the first place. But they're taking the money, they're taking all the funding away from the only shit that is keeping people who don't have time or energy to be creative, don't have the money to outsource, don't have the skills to produce or whatever. They're keeping the only creative lifeline they have, they're pulling it away from them in the form of stopping all the creative people from having a job, retrain bullshit. Like, and I know that advert was actually an earlier advert made for something else, blah, blah, blah. But the underlying principle is so clear. Like, there is no thinking past the initial first post. What do we do now? Never mind that. Creativity, who's got time for the creativity? Oh, no, get a job. We need to make more money. We need to put money into the economy. Fucking free people's minds, man. Like, free their creativity and they'll put money into your stupid economy. Like, it just makes me so angry.
And does he consider how important, like, culture and art, whether it's music, whether it's fucking
it's the only thing left when you die. Nobody gives a fuck about how much money you had in your bank. No, I mean, nobody goes to Spain to the Sagrada Familia and thinks, I wonder how much money Gaudi had, who died a pauper, by the way. But, like, nobody gives a fuck about that shit. They're like, look at this beautiful piece of long-lasting art that tells me something that I could never truly understand about history without it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I listen to a whole pile of musicians that are long, long dead, and I couldn't tell you if they were rich or not when they died. Do you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't tell you anything about them other than their music and their life that's attached to their music. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's
passing a feeling through generations, passing a feeling through years and years and years. Like Billie Holiday's "Strange Fruit," for instance. Like, a song like that is forever. It's never not going to be timeless. And it's never not going to have the same feeling behind it, because those pieces of art that stay and matter, they are the fucking story. It's nothing to do with it. Nobody's going to think, oh, Boris Johnson, man, what a fucking contributor to culture, you know? Like, they're just going to think, wow.
But without culture, what are we?
Nothing.
What are we without
That's
culture?
We're
fuck all. We're fuck all. We're like as good as fucking ants, man. We're ants. We're worker ants.
Exactly, man.
But that's what they want, though. Like, that's what they want, though. I mean, like, no, but what I mean is, like, I know it sounds like a mad person's fucking plan, but No, but it is though. I mean, at the end of the game, like the more sedated you are, and the more that you're just going to work and churning over money, the more beneficial it is for people who own all the businesses, and they're the ones who are pushing policy. So you know what I mean? It's within like they don't want you. They don't want you to have social lives. You know what I mean? They don't want you to have weekends if they can avoid it. You've been doing more hours.
You're right,
So-
man.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
But so on the show, we like to sort of champion individuals and independent artists and stuff like that, right? So people could go to Spotify and listen to Present Tense, right? But what's the best thing for them to do for you to actually
Make
like
money.
be able to go and make more
What
music?
I will say this: every single penny that I get from music goes back into music. Like that's my philosophy with it. It's like if I like say whatever. They should go to Bandcamp is what they should do and actually buy it. That would be the best thing to do. You can buy my full discography on Bandcamp for $13.50, or you can buy the album for $10. So it's a steal, really.
Aye.
But yeah, I think a lot of creatives, that's it. If you get the ball, I've managed to get the ball rolling, and it's minuscule. You know, it's nothing to write home about. But that ball rolling keeps me creating. So like you're contributing to the continuing mental health of me by essentially. And in turn that has a ripple effect to all those around me.
Well, that's a good thing, aye, man. So go to Bandcamp. So well, I mean, you'll give us the link, and we'll put it up on the show notes and stuff. We'll put it up on our website. We'll push everybody towards it, and also like can we like stick a few bits the songs and stuff.
Oh
with
yeah,
so, like,
for
folk can
sure.
hear
Put
wee bits
anything
of it
you
and
want,
shit as well.
man. Aye, definitely.
Cool. Yeah, Paul,
Does that mean I'm editing this episode then, Jerry?
Paul, that's exactly what
As long as you get at least 20 seconds of the Matt Bellamy thing in, because I love.
Aye, that's it. I'm going to cut that, even if it might mean we'll have a fucking legal case with Matt Bellamy. I'm still going to put that in there.
Matt Bellamy can't have copyrighted his own fucking inward breathing.
That is as well. Like, think about how good it would be as a promotional tool for us if we had to go to court with Matt Bellamy over his inhaled voice. It's going to ruin it for every
Get
other
that
listener.
mixed up, man. Get that mixed up. I think on one of Darren's albums, I want to see it wasn't Do Not Disturbed. The one after that, there's a song on it, and it's All My Breaths mixed. Because I used to work with a guy called Bill Breaks, who was a producer. Doesn't do any music anymore. He's out, man. He's out the game for reasons that we have just talked about. But me and him used to have a wee band called Becky Breaks. It was great. And he took All My Breaths and he made this fucking amazing song. I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but I can't. But I'll send you it, but it's amazing what he did with it. It's really haunting and scary. Maybe you could do that, like a Matt Bellamy compilation.
Breath like make beats out of your breath.
I just we can add that.
Sorry.
We can add that to the list of things that I've got to do here. I'll now do a remix and Matt Bellamy. I'll create a track. I'll just write a track with Matt Bellamy breath, just while I'm not doing anything else.
Another option, Paul, is to make like a really, really like specific is it ASMR? Is that what they call it?
ASMR.
Aye, one of the ones.
Dad, can you make us dinner? No, I'm nearly finished mixing doing this ASMR and Matt Bellamy.
I don't know. I think if
I'm going to back on YouTube.
The notes away, all the music away from Matt Bellamy, it would be wholly annoying. His voice, like.
Aye. Like, this is the thing that annoys me. Like, so the breathing and that, like I say, because of the way that I was taught to sing and stuff, like I'm so aware. It's like, don't take a breath like that. You don't need to. You're a fucking grown adult. You know how to fucking breathe. So
it's almost like he's trying to get so much in his lungs, so he can. He does have a cut voice.
But he's a belter and a musician. He's a belter and a musician, though. That's the thing. Like, that's what like he can fucking play. Like
doing sharp intakes of breath, for example.
No, I mean neither.
I think he probably.
Buckley just fucking absorb. He's just got to go through every singer. Every singer.
He's out.
Just talk about every breathe.
He's out.
like for me, like Buckley is like.
Oh my god, yeah.
Up there, like unbeatable. Probably.
There's so many
like,
good. So
my favourite.
Live at Shinny, when he does The Way Young Lovers Do, as a fucking beast of track. And then there's, I love a couple of his really less well-known songs. So I love What Will You Say? You know, the Mother, Can You Hear Me? Do You Know Me? That one, which is on Sketches, I think, for My Sweetheart the Drunk. And there's another one on that's a fucking belter. It's called All Flowers in Time, Bend Towards the Sun. Oh my God, it's beautiful. That was the tattoo I wanted to get for ages. It's like,
I don't think I've listened to Sketches. By the way, this might be, just so we're clear, this might be the weirdest podcast we've ever recorded. Like, this is
I love it though.
Like, of all the interviews that we've ever done, there's never been a breakdown moment where it's just like, but what is your favourite Buckley track if you were listening to it?
I think
it depends on the mood and stuff.
Though, is literally one of the greatest songs ever written. I've got a mentor, right? He's my colleague now.
A kingdom for a kiss upon my shoulder.
What a line! Come on.
All my riches for her smiles when I step so soft against her. Aye, man, it's fucking unbelievable.
It's stunning work, like really stunning work. And my mentor, Davy Scott of the Pedal Officials, who I love with all my heart, is a good friend and a colleague. But he hates Jeff Buckley. And like, I can't understand that.
How?
And I just feel like the only way you could hate him is if he hasn't actually listened. Like, and that's this thing about listening into it. You have to, like, I love Tom Waits, right? And you can't love Tom Waits unless you fucking listen, right? Tom Waits is literally telling you to fucking listen, because you either listen or you fuck off, because you can't sit in between with somebody like that as an artist. And I think there's an element of that in Jeff Buckley.
Tom Waits has the background music.
Oh, it is though. Oh, it is. Oh my.
No, but I mean, you need to take the time to actually understand.
I think like Jeff Buckley could have probably ended up being one of the biggest acts in the world. I think if he'd continued, like what a first album that was. Do you know what I mean? It just,
he'd have hated that though.
Yeah, probably not. You know, people like money. It was in the 90s. Like if you got to like Eddie Vedder kind of fame, I think like stadium gig fame, like I think he'd have been a happy chappy. But
see, I don't, right, and I'll tell you for why. Because Eddie Vedder. Eddie Vedder was like, by the way, I love Eddie Vedder. I love Pearl Jam a lot. I've got tickets to go and see them next year. But Eddie Vedder, I know, right? It's an absolute toss up whether I'm going to get tickets or no, but fuck it, you know what I mean?
You'll be watching that on Zoom.
but Eddie Vedder, I think for me, isn't he somebody who's ever fucking like sat and made somebody record fucking songs over, like, wouldn't he spend a fucking 2 years in the studio going, no, I'm not happy with that, like, no, I want to do that again, no, you know, like
it's a different kind of grunge, isn't it? Like, it's more of a like let it out, man, whatever happens.
And there's feeling in it, and it's cool, and I like that vibe as well, but Buckley was a perfectionist. He was a perfectionist, and so I don't think he would have been somebody where the sort of cycle of major label music and success would have sat well with him, because like his fucking money men would have just been like, get the fucking album out.
I think like there was a genre of music that was quite indescript there in that time when like Rage came out and Alice in Chains and like all those bands that were just kind of like, what?
Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Blind Melon,
it's kind of pop, it's kind of rock, it's kind of grunge, it's ticking hundreds of boxes, my sensors are fucking everywhere. It certainly wasn't pop, it was alternative music. But I think like if you can't actually go, oh, that one was just like that one, so that's that genre, and that there was like a lot of crossover genres.
A lot of crossover, aye. Like Smashing Pumpkins were kind of grunge, but like kind of quite niche and stuff as well. Like, a lot of folk didn't like Billy Corgan's voice.
You're right. No, I take it back. You're right. Maybe he would never have been a stadium artist, but I think like he would have had that, like the cult following that he's got could only have grown. I mean, listening to Sketches, obviously it's not a finished piece of work. He would probably actually hate it that it was out. But,
yeah. Like, I think he absolutely would. He absolutely would.
But it is artistic. They are in it. That's for me what music's about, right? They are. That's why I love Joni Mitchell as well, because, like, and in so many ways, like she was bringing so much modernity to a fucking genre that was, you know, your Nick Drakes and your, you know, all this kind of like, you know, we've heard that kind of folk genre. And she brought this mad multi-syllabic delivery and like rhyming words that don't. It was almost rap. Some of it's fucking crazy, you know. And like, so she was a bit of a pioneer of that genre, a bit avant-garde. I guess Jeff Buckley is as well, man, in his way, you know. But you're right about that song.
Jeff Buckley's music's really clean though. There's a cleanness to Jeff Buckley. Like there's a clean sound. Like it's like, you know how you were saying like Eddie Vedder, like
Eddie
Pearl
Vedder.
Jam. There's a distorted
just like
Darth,
let him singing Hallelujah. Would be weird.
But like, so they've got like a distorted sound, you know what I mean, a rocky sound, whereas Jeff Buckley is so clean sounding. Like I don't even think he could play a stadium because it's so clean sounding.
Like,
do you know what I mean? Like
his pals, weren't they? Like he brought his pals in. Like his band were all people that he'd worked with before. Not necessarily the most. He was obviously compositionally genius, but like the drummer and that, I think, you know, they weren't top end musicians. They were just.
Well, the thing is, like he played a lot with really top end musicians, like in between times, like when he was writing and like when he was trying to get band members and stuff. Like Danny Carey played, like at one point was fucking going to be Jeff Buckley's session musician. Danny Carey being the drummer for Tool, by the way.
Fucking hell, I didn't know that, but I know Tool.
Right. Yeah, and he's a fucking absolute.
Imagine Jeff Buckley singing our fucking Danny Carey playing drums.
Nice.
That's my radio.
Their cover of No
I don't have a Jeff
by
Buckley
Led
tattoo.
Zeppelin is one of my favourite Tool songs, actually. Like,
well,
what a beautiful cover that is.
Maynard's a fucking cracking melody writer and stuff as well. Like, so Rick Beato, the guy I was talking about earlier, does some fucking a lot of kind of deep dives on Tool and the Perfect Circle songs, and so I'm like totally in my element watching that. But you fucking pissed yourself after me talking about Maynard being a melody writer. No,
I'm just pissing myself because I'm just thinking to myself that this podcast is a quality podcast, but it's now just a music podcast. We're now just talking about our favourite bands, which I'm very, very okay with.
You can superimpose these structures on a society, man. Like everyone in them, like Jeff Buckley is like basically like the working class hero of fucking, although he's not, because he was very well educated and actually like really, really, really good musician. But all his influences were like Nina Simone, and like they had this pure Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan fetish, which is like
a
lot of his fucking singing style came from, which is super Eastern and, you know, it doesn't feel classic.
And I like fucking Lilac Wine was a Nina Simone cover, wasn't it? Like, or I don't know if it was her original song, but something like that was the fucking version that he was copying.
It's
type of thing. See the thing, and that's weird. Like, I think with Grace as an album, as I've got older, there's songs that I didn't appreciate that much on it when I was younger that I absolutely fucking adore now. And like Lilac Wine is one of them. Like, I fucking hated Lilac Wine. I was like, fucking skip that shit.
It's too slow, man, as well. And like, the kind of ballad element of it. I still can't really get to grips with Corpus Christi, to be honest. Like,
Same.
I get it. Like, and that's the thing about Jeff Buckley, though. Like, I will move. I know you don't want to just talk about music, but like,
No, I'm very okay with it. Like, it's just because it's never happened before. And me and Jerry are so into music. Do you know what I mean?
This
it's
is what
such
we
a
would
big
be
part of our
talking
life.
about if we weren't podcast.
This is like it's such a big part of our lives, but we never ever talk about it on the podcast because never has there been a guest who was talking about music. Even when, I suppose the only other two musicians we've ever had on are the LaFontaines and Darren. But Darren was talking about specific politics at the time. LaFontaines were talking about like lockdown and how they were dealing with the music industry from that point of view. So they weren't talking about their influences.
And they're not big Jeff Buckley fans, also.
No. I mean, I would retract
Buckley hole and blah 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 about it all night, but
I would retract that though, because I think Jamie Keenan's probably a Jeff Buckley fan.
That's what it is. I think it's just a really good example of the importance of lyric and melody and getting emotion across. But then you wonder how much all these stories of these artists and people who have got these tragic lives. Like, I think humans are dead good at superimposing narrative where it doesn't exist onto stuff as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're really good at going,
because it's how we understand
this is a
the world.
precursor to his demise, you know, but it wasn't. It was just an album. Like, it was an album that he released. He probably thought he was going to release about 50 more, you know, the same as many bands and acts. It's interesting that. But then you've got somebody like, what's his name, Trent Reznor, who, like, his whole life, man, he was just singing about death. And everyone was like, this is pure cheesy and cliche, man. And like, it's total pop. I'm thinking of the right guy, ain't I? Linkin Park. That's Trent Reznor.
No, that's
Trent Reznor.
Trent Reznor's Nine Inch Nails.
Nine Inch Nails, aye. He's no DJ.
I'm getting lost, man. But
No, but I know what you mean, because I like never considered Linkin Park to be authentic, and then he went and killed himself. I was like, oh, you were right, mate. You did his pain.
It turns out you were writing from a very specific well.
Right. And it's funny how that's what I mean. So we superimpose narrative onto things, right? So like all those wee emo kids, me included, hanging about the galleries of modern art, fucking cutting about, man, just like, and all that stuff, man. We're using it as a way to present an identity and aesthetic. There's this like cool theory about how subcultures happen.
Cultural signifier, isn't it?
It's like subcultures happen without the permission of the culture creator themselves. So like the culture creator does a thing that is unique and exemplifies something very specific about them and their art. And then the subculture, they kind of create an association with that and then turn it into the narrative that it becomes. But not often is that narrative actually driven by the social creator. Do you know what I mean? The person that created that culture. They don't go out their way. Picasso didn't go out his way, you know, to create, I'm going to say cubism. And like, I think that's the right one. And like, and so on and so forth. And it's the same in music. Right. Do you know what I mean? Like fucking, you know, Bob Dylan didn't go out his way to create, you know, that kind of like troubadour, fucking traveling folk culture and so on and so forth. And so the same for like,
it's like Black Sabbath didn't go out their way to create metal.
Right.
They were just doing music that they wanted to do. And
some people,
like they didn't know who they were. Yeah.
Sorry, Paul. Some people were coming you.
No. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. So like exactly that. Like they just do it by accident. Like not by accident, but that's because what they're doing, and just then that culture comes. So I mean, if you take like Black Sabbath, before Black Sabbath, there wasn't metal at all really, and they created like metal. Like they created pretty much everything that came after that. And if you think about how many subgenres there is now,
maps, right, of like genre maps and how like starting with the birth of what you would call rock and roll, which is the birth of commercial culture in terms of like stylizing music and music culture. There's another really good example of how country music was standardized, and I can't remember the name of it, Creole recording or something. There's like a very specific recording that happened because a guy somewhere was like, I really like all this country, all this like rural black person music. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to get them all into one room, and I'd like to get the Carter family, and other like white folks to sing over the music they make, and I'd like to record it, and we're going to call it country music, and we're going to standardise the form kind of thing. So it's like all these moments in time where these things are created and are standardised, but there's a beautiful little map that shows you the roots of it all, like a tree, you know. So it's like these really specific ones, like metal, rock and roll, like psychedelia, like folk and all that. All their little roots all come down to the same shit, man. They're all intertwined. They're all part of the same thing, you know, and they just grow and morph and form depending on the culture, what the specific subculture needs at that time, you know. So it's never really, it's like, is art yours once you create it? You know, like you create something, you put it out there. Do you now own it anymore? How does it get interpreted? If you didn't mean, say you make something and it's fucking like Darren, again, use Darren as an example, created a video a few years ago and it was really widely received, and then retroactively it was interpreted as offensive. But and by that point it was out and there was no control over it, you know, because it existed in form and it became something else, and then it became a kind of model for conversations, cultural conversations and whatnot that happen. It's just really interesting, I think, how these things happen, you know. Like, I didn't know until one of my students told me the other day that punk started in America, and it was all about an urban aesthetic. So it was really nothing to do with creating this like an anarchic counterculture. It was just about having a really urban aesthetic, and they kind of had to represent the city in terms of like torn jeans and all this stuff. And then somewhat like it came to Britain and became something else now.
But musically, it was also just about like not being like a fucking theoretical musician who'd like fucking. But you know, I think up to that point, certainly at that sort of snapshot in British music history, all of the bands who were like really big and stuff were like public school educated, like, you know, like Zeppelin and Floyd and stuff like that were really well brought up, were really well educated, were great musicians and stuff, but there wasn't any real entry point for like just fucking like scheme kids or like fucking inner city boys and whatever to just pick up an instrument and start doing it. And punk, the aesthetic of punk didn't require you to fucking have any of that. It was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to make it noise, and if it fucking sounds good, then fuck it. And it was super basic and super angsty, and I like it, man.
I think rave is punk now in a weird way. Like, if you like root it up, like,
what it was when we were kids.
Oh, I know. Like, you know what I mean? Eckies are punk now. I
think rave is. I think rave was 25 years ago. Rave was like 25 years ago.
Whatever the fuck it is now, right? Whatever it is, that is kind of the part. Like, because you're right, it's totally about the kind of entry level aesthetic into it. It's like, I'm going to make noise. I want to make noise. I want to release my body through music. I want to be part of something. It's much more community.
Lest we wander on, graceful, without hope. Lest we wander on, graceful, without hope.
So I guess the big question would be like, what the fuck's going on with Donald Trump right now?
That's
like,
a great question. Well, I think like what a random, unplanned question. You know what is fucking scary though, right? Mike Pompeo has been on TV to say that they are getting ready for the smooth transition to another Trump term. So he's actually got like his highest officials. Like, here's the thing: all the stuff before this is just a puppet show. Like, he's the head of the Republicans. They've got their agenda. He's a fucking idiot, but he's not dangerous yet. And now, this is when you'll see what happens, like what's going to happen. Because
so Mike Pompeo said that today.
He said it in front of the press today. He came out.
That's fucked up, man.
So, like, he's obviously got his whatever his. They don't have anything, but they're clearly willing to do something that they.
Yeah, I like Mike Pompeo's not a nobody. Mike Pompeo's like ex-head of the CIA.
Yeah,
he's a current Secretary of State.
Yeah,
like I know from like reading Bob Woodward's books that the other heads of the intelligence services would always like ask Pompeo to break bad news to Trump because like Trump really thought a lot of him. Like he's got a good rapport with him or whatever, but he's not an idiot. Although apparently he fucking is.
It's really interesting to me because we're kind of talking about it earlier with the Tories, and I feel like, and I'm maybe naive, but I feel like there is still, I think there's a line that Johnson, not Johnston, that's a place in Paisley, couldn't cross, but Trump, like, I think he's about to show us like exactly how far these fucking cronies will go for him. And you just got to ask yourself, what is actually in it for these people in the long run? We don't function in a society where any of us would want to see like these guys essentially are enabling a coup, right? If they do that.
Yeah.
So in other societies, we would, and by we, I'm using the royal Western we.
But societal norms would mean that those people would completely destroy their reputations by engaging in that kind of behaviour.
Everybody would condemn it, and these people would go before court. Right. So and I'm not saying they should. I'm not one of the people that says take them to court. But I just think, like, what are they going to do? It'd be really interesting to see how this fucking system that they covet as the most, pioneer in democracy, how does it hold up when a despot is literally standing there making up reasons to not leave, and what will happen next? It's
also it's concerning because, like, you've got a situation where like his defense secretary has just resigned and has basically warned everybody that, like, what are you going to get after me? You're going to get a yes man. So, like, watch your fuck out.
Yeah.
You had General Mattis before, who had a very good relationship with Rex Tillerson, who was the Secretary of State at the time. They've both been moved on because they had drawn lines in the sand and weren't prepared to go along with Trump with certain things that he wanted to do. So, that's
a yes man for what? For 3 months? Like, I just think, how much is he, like, I don't think, how much could he do in 3 months? I think this guy is going to tear shit down. If he has to leave, he's going to tear shit down. I think he'll resign. He'll do a bargain with Pence to get Pence to pardon him.
To pardon him.
So, like, because if he resigns, then he can find some sort of moral fucking hill to stand on and go, I'm not taking this. You deserve better than this, and I can't be part of this institution, America, if they're going to do this to us. So he's still got his thing going, and then he can get Pence in charge, and then he can get pardoned. I think
Pence gets to be president for a wee while, and he'll be digging that.
He'd fucking love that, wouldn't he, man?
Well,
honestly,
will that not mean that he'll be entitled to have, like, security detail for the rest of his life and all that type of shit as well? And you were a president
and stuff as well.
That's
a big deal. Presidential pensions are fucking massive. Fucking hang on, he can't sit for life. He was actually financially in trouble before he was approached to be his running mate.
Aye, they both have. It'll be interesting to see what happens next, man. But I think, like, I don't sign up for, like, the kind of moral liberal victory of it all either. Like, I think that there's, like, for me, like, Trump leaving represents people beating a psychopath. Like, I think that's why I'm happy about it, because to me, he is a psychopathic, misogynist, narcissist, and he doesn't have. And there's so many people, and his whole life he's grifted and been so powerful, and he's just a poster child for an ideology of people that I fucking hate. And, like, and I know it's terrible to say that, but, like,
no, it's not really.
I just want him to get muppins, and I want him to feel not supported. I want him to feel caught out. I want him to feel those feelings, and it's, like, really visceral inside me. But I don't have the same visceral hope of Joe Biden being amazing. I just think, I don't
think, like, that's it. Like, exactly. Like, he's the lesser of two evils. He's a means to an ends. Like,
he's basically a liberal Mitt Romney. Like, they're the same person. Like, I think, like, that's how centrist he is.
But the problem is the amount of people who voted for Trump still. There's still over 70 million people in America that are ready to support Trump, that are happy to support Trump, and that's a massive problem. That means that the problem is, like, actually completely ingrained in half almost of the American voting culture. You know what I mean? And that's the danger.
And it's more of a problem because of the way that Trump is dealing with the transition. Because, like, the first thing that previous Republican, but also, like, just basically not going along with the process, claiming the process is flawed or fraudulent. Like, you look at people like Bush, the first Bush, Bush Senior, or John McCain, who when he lost to Obama the first time round, the way that they, like, gave their speeches and talked about, getting America back and making sure that America wasn't a split society and blah, 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 blah. Like, you're kind of basically working the social narrative forward in a way that's like combining it, making sure that people aren't just going off on mad divisive shit. And like essentially like
understood moral norms, like just things that we take for granted.
Right. And so that's, for me, like that's what the victory against Trump is. It's a victory for like bringing back societal norms where like politicians are at least like polite with each other, even when they disagree with each other, where like these cultural sort of signifiers of just like not being a cunt to everybody, like, because he's basically emboldened racists, sexists, homophobes, transphobes, everybody to be like, oh, well, I can just say what I think now because the president says what he thinks, and that's totally fine. It's been like, it's degraded global society because we all fucking take a lead, whether we like it or not. We all take a lead for American culture. I wish we didn't, but we fucking do.
Aye, we do, man. And that's it. It's a Charlie Brooker sketch, isn't it? Like, remember when that wee cartoon guy was president, was prime minister in the Charlie Brooker in Black Mirror? Can't remember his name. And everyone was like, but that's like, so what? It wasn't actually about the cartoon. It wasn't the farce that it is, and the farce that is Trump. It's not about him. It's about how far he was willing to push a divisive narrative to get what he wants. And you can only be that divisive if you lack empathy. And that's dangerous because you're playing into the fears of people who do have empathy, but what they lack is a voice. They they feel that they've not been listened to. They've lost their jobs. There's lots of very, very, there's very clear reasons why certain demographics would vote for Trump. Yeah. And it's to fulfill a need to regain a bit of pride and control and feel like there's a place for them in society. Now, a liberal agenda in general, when it's functioning properly, should be looking out for these people, and it often comes with a kind of longer term vision of the same goal. But for a society that's already so divided, if you play the hate card, like if you play into that hatred, you've seen it here as well, know what I mean? You play into that hatred, then you're basically setting the stage for a war, essentially. And like, this guy doesn't have a fucking back down button. Like, he doesn't have, because he doesn't feel empathy. So he doesn't. And now is the most dangerous time. Like they were saying, the transition period between, obviously there was the mess up between Al Gore and George Bush and whatever. And so the transition period between Clinton and Bush was one of the most dangerous times. And always that period is dangerous in terms of security and stuff like that, because literally the cabinet is shuffling and changing around, so they don't have the same structures in place. So he's just fucking sacked his defence guy, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And he's just about to embark on what is essentially going to become an identity war. In 3 months, he thinks in 3 months, what is he going? How far is he willing to take it? That's what I want to know. Because he's going to start seeing people killing people in the streets. More so than he already is fucking seeing, you know? Either that...
There's Trump supporters out with guns now, standing at the accounting centres. Like, there's people out with guns and the streets.
And there's Democrats as well. I'm not trying to support Trump's policy. I think it's ridiculous that there's guns at all. But, there's... I think that's the danger of blind patriotism. Right, and I think America is a great example of you know, how things can be tried and tested and work and don't work and changed and fixed and overruled, and you know, it feels like it's in motion, it's moving a lot. But the underpinning thing that they teach their kids is wholly patriotic. So there's this really like blind patriotism that comes out differently in every person, depending on their specific demographic, need, want, situation, you know? So they all think they're claiming America for themselves.
So does Scottish nationalism worry in the same way?
Sometimes. Any kind of blind patriotism worries me. Like, but I'm really, I like to travel, and I like to do that alone, and I enjoy immersing myself in other ways of life, and I've been all over the world, and the one thing that I've realised is that if anywhere I've ever been, I've felt at home. So, like, I don't know if that, like, I don't know if a lot of patriotism actually is jingoism, or like it's something that's manifesting as pride, but is kind of fear of the other. And of course, we've got the brilliant, righteous enemy of England, you know, like this pure, like, you know, Scotland have suffered through history at the hands of the English, you know. And so that I think Scottish nationalism is really, really interesting. I voted yes. I would vote yes again. I really like Nicola Sturgeon. I see the flaws in most systems, you know, here and there. But I think it's interesting because it seems to want to balance that blind patriotism with an underpinning of inclusivity. And not often do you see that. You kind of see it in America in the liberal politics, but it can often, well, it can overload here as well, can't it? Both sides can become extreme.
Oh,
and that is a problem, you know.
I think the through line of the nationalist movement as it's communicated via the Scottish National Party is one of inclusive nationalism.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that chimes with me. It's something that I'm very much into. I do think Nicola Sturgeon's a fantastic politician. I did vote yes, and I will vote yes again. However, unfortunately, we do have this fringe of the nationalist movement who are very, like, Trump-esque in a lot of ways, you know, like, and the language might not necessarily be racist, although, like, maybe to the English people sometimes, but it's certainly xenophobic, transphobic at times.
Oh yeah,
like,
there's a lot of transphobic.
Like that's really, and I think that's something that's like they don't even realise is being pushed upon them by certain bloggers and stuff like that. And it's an export from the right wing of American politics. Like, it's a export from right wing Christianity in America.
Big time.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And England and our own, you know, roots in a very, very traditional religious core, and also, you know, religious separatism in this country as well. Like, it's a very hard field to navigate because it's also being navigated mostly through the medium of social media.
Which is
mostly even worse.
I mean, I know, and I've actually tiptoed around Twitter. I only joined it a few months ago because my album was coming out.
Yeah.
And like, I've seen Darren fall blind to, you know, the imaginary hands of justice on Twitter, you know, and like, I always think if you're batting for one team only, then you're missing something, you know. I really, really important to have like some sort of line that you're willing to accept things from, you know, that you're willing to go, okay, I see your point, but rather than go, fuck you, yeah, fucking, you know, this and that. It's so unhealthy, like, but
also you need to know when to not support your own side, if you will. Like, you need to know where like, you know, you need to be rounded and equal and as unbiased as possible in your criticism. And it's hard because, like, we all have our own biases, we all have our own fucking agendas, like, you know, and me and Paul have similar biases and agendas, and also slightly different ones, but like, you need to be able to know when
you need to be able to talk
to
people, man. Like, and actually, we're not as easy. None of us are as easily offended as we come across on Twitter. Like, I was actually in a real life situation very recently that proves this point, right? So I won't name any names, but I was meeting with two other women, right? And we'd not seen each other, and we were meeting in a cafe. And the Black Lives Matter thing came up, right? And I was like, Black Lives Matter. My friend was like, Black Lives Matter. And we were talking about it, blah, blah, blah. And then our other friend chipped in with the All Lives Matter chat, right? Now, if that had been fucking Twitter, right, I wouldn't even know that person anymore. But through a very, very short very, very measured and calm conversation, that person was like, all right, no, I totally understand, yeah, and that was it. It was over.
Yeah.
And it was like that is what, like, the reducing things to fucking 280 characters literally is the most stupid and arbitrary thing you could do when you're trying to have a cultural conversation. And so I try not to have it on Twitter at all, man.
Also jumping on somebody for like something that like I would disagree with, right? So if someone said all lives matter to me, like who I didn't know, I would just be like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're a fucking idiot. But like, if you've got the opportunity to, and you do know the person, like, so you're invested in them anyway, but you've also got the opportunity to have them sitting in front of you and be like, well, hold on a minute, right? So what about this, and this? Like, I do think that people, I think there's kind of a myth right now that everybody's like just like fucking over here and over here, and we're all camped into our positions and we can't change them. Like, but people sometimes, like, you know, just based on what newspaper they've read or what article they've read online or who they're hanging about with, have formed an opinion where they maybe don't have all the information available 100%. To them. And I think you can speak to them and persuade them otherwise. Like,
and also come from the angle that you might not. Obviously,
I might not know everything.
Not be something as clear, but you know, it was the whole analogy. My house is burning. Well, what about my house? You know, you get it. The analogy's there for us all to understand. But you know, some things aren't. The boundaries are more blurred, and the lines aren't as clear. And I think it's really important that we all take a stance where we understand that you cannot deny someone else's personal experience. If somebody comes at you angrily, you will react angrily back to them, and that's the culture that we've created. Do you know what I mean, on Twitter? But like you say, even if you met somebody in a pub and you had just been chatting to them for 20 minutes and you've got their bearings, if that same conversation came up, you would find an amicable conclusion for it. I am pretty sure.
You would try and persuade them in a friendly way.
Aye. And there might be we'll agree to disagree, and there might be a parting of ways, and there might be probably wouldn't hang about with that guy again or whatever. But there would not be the same level of fucking
vitriol,
insanity around things where we can't see. So many things can just be solved by taking the time and having patience to talk to someone. Do you know what I mean? And I had a really interesting experience again around the Black Lives Matter thing. I didn't go to the march on the day, but I went to a march the day before, a social distance organised one in Glasgow Green. I cycled down, and so it was just me and a bunch of my friends from hip hop. And like, so, you know, a lot of my friends obviously are you know, very, very much ingrained in the hip hop culture. And that is, by all intents and purposes, you know, has roots in Black African American culture. Mm-hmm. But we're all white, apart from one or two of us, because we're from Scotland, you know. And so we were sitting around, having, you know, being supportive, and a woman came over, a beautiful, beautiful woman. She's a dancer named Divine, and she sat down in our group because it was so small. And like, I'm coming always coming from a left angle. I'm always want to be, you know, one of those people that's making sure that I'm ahead of the curve in terms of, you know, the way you know, I'm always ready to learn, essentially. But also, I sometimes do have this probably accidental assumption that I'm not offending people. Do you know what I mean? And like, so it was really.
I think we're on the right side of everything, so we're all good.
Exactly, yeah. But we cannot come from an angle of lived experience all the time, because we haven't lived every fucking experience, right? And this woman, she's put it so clearly for me, and she just sat down, and she's a Black woman, and she just talked about her experience as a Black female in Glasgow, and she broke it down from primary school to now where she's at, when she's even having to watch films. Why she said, I didn't say, she said, you know, why do they need to keep making slave films, for instance? Like, you know, it just perpetuates and furthers this this understanding, this like reminder of the hierarchy, the social or cultural hierarchy. But some of the stuff she said really chimed in with me, because what I realised was I was in a safe place where I could say to her, you know, I wasn't like I wasn't apologising to her. It wasn't like I was trying to virtue signal, but I was able to very openly understand that I have been just as bigoted in my lifetime without meaning it, growing up in Glasgow and being a young Ned in Glasgow and like going through all, and for us to deny the learning curve that we've all been on to come from a stance where we're like, this is right and this is wrong. You know, like it's not right, man. So I think like we need to allow everybody to have that learning curve and give them space to, the word might not even be learn, just give them safe space to experience things when they experience them. The best way to learn something is to feel its effects personally. You know, that's what society is. So it's really interesting, but for me, it comes down to always having an open ear. And I guess that comes back to the whole Tories are cunts and all that stuff. Like I've always got an open ear because that's been afforded to me. Do you know what I mean? And like, otherwise I would just still be a wee arsehole cutting about, shouting at people, you know?
I've spoken to Paul about this a lot, but I find myself a lot of times in work where I'll maybe have to work with people who have the opposite views for me on lots of things, including sometimes maybe being quite, you know, expressing views that I would consider to be quite racist, quite xenophobic and stuff like that, you know. And but I have to work directly with them and like all day, like 15 hours a day and stuff on an oil rig, you know what I mean? So there's two things you can do there. You can either just be like, you can just be super aggressive and shut it down and be like, I don't want to fucking talk to you about any of this stuff because I fucking disagree with you and you're wrong. And that's going to make your working relationship very strained. Or what I've learned to try and do is to just sort of be like, all right, okay, that's what you think, fair enough, blah, 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 blah. Well, I kind of think this, but, you know, I understand where you're coming from. And we go and start doing this thing now. And then, like, through the day, so, mind you were saying about that. Well, what do you think about this? And you know, do you know that this happened and this happened? So, like, do you think that like affects how you feel about it? Or blah, blah, like, just chip away at them. And like, if I work with someone for 2 weeks, almost every fucking single time I have, by the end of it, they're coming away going, you know what, actually, man, like, I fucking get where you're coming from. I think maybe some of my opinions are like fucking a bit backwards, you know, and like you've made me, and I've like given them links to like, so I get their number because I work with them, and I'm like, I'll WhatsApp you a couple of videos to watch tonight when you're in your cabin, you know what I mean? Like, fucking watch this, think about this, you know.
It's just it's like such a nice way, right, to approach a difficult issue. Like because you're accounting for, you know, the Bordovian philosophy of habitus, like the idea that people only know what they know and are a product of their environment, and there's nothing that we can do about that except converse with it. Like, so like I worked for the council as a leisure attendant, as a lifeguard in Glasgow Line. Right. And I loved everyone I worked with, and I worked there over the time of the referendum, and I worked in Castlemilk. So like I was interfacing with people who were coming from a very different social background from me, and these people were fucking good family people who cared, and they had that like interesting codes around chivalry and stuff, and just interesting stuff that I've kind of thrown out because I'm so progressive, you know. But these people coming from a really good, not all of them, some of them were students, and you know, it wasn't just that, but there were some people who were old school, worked at the company from the area, had come out of school into the company, and they were, you know, they were voting no, and they were this and they were that, and my life would have been a living hell, man, if I had just like, you know, fucking hammered my point down. But that is actually the point, isn't it? Like, when you're actually in a social situation, you don't just teach, you learn, you understand, you're able to move in the chess game that is life, and see that you can't just fucking call someone a primitive because they've not, you know, interfaced with the same education as you, or they've not. It's so fucking. It's actually primitive, like, to do that. You know, like
tribal, it's tribal.
Man, it's fucked up.
But like, you get. Sometimes as well, you'll be learning stuff that you didn't know about, and you'll be seeing things from a point of view that you hadn't considered. And sometimes you'll, like, especially, it's good. Like, if it's something that you feel very, very strongly about, it's also good to get an insight into what the point of view is that you're arguing against, you know, because it makes you consider, all right, okay, well, here's something that I can think about the next time this comes up, you know?
Yeah.
Like, if you really like want to be like getting into activism and getting involved in changing people's minds and persuading them, then you need to understand how they think and what they think about, you know? You've been very quiet, Paul.
Well, I mean, I've just been listening to basically something. Like, I don't really know what you want me to say here. Like, it's.
I think it's.
I agree.
The interesting thing right now about, like, obviously the conspiracy theory wing of life and the QAnon stuff and all that is, like, see if you met me, like 2010 or like even maybe a wee bit before that, like, I would have told you straight up that 9/11 was an inside job. In fact, I kind of still believe it. Like I've interfaced with conspiracy theories too, you know, and like I think like it's really interesting. This, I remember my dad, who's the smartest man, and I'm not just saying everyone says that about their dad. I don't know, but my dad's one of the smartest people I know. You know, he's one of those people that you could ask anything and knew the answer. And a very religious man. And very, very stoic, you know, it takes his time, he's very thoughtful. I remember sitting him down and making him watch Zeitgeist with me, and then making him watch, what was the other one? Something America.
Short Circuit? No.
Making America or something like that.
What was the big one that had me on the 9/11 conspiracy? I'm sure it was called Short Circuit. Do you remember watching that, Paul? No?
I watched everything, Jerry. I was heavy into conspiracies for a long time, man.
I think it's like pure shite to just be like fucking conspiracy theorist idiots. Like I don't
like there's levels and there's things that did happen, there's things that didn't, you know what I mean? And I think
there's stuff that's believable, right? So there's stuff that's believable, like
let's do the checkbox. Where does your line?
Listen.
Right,
so I want to tell you something, like, in terms of like, so me and Paul interviewed a guy fairly recently, and like during lockdown, I think, Paul, called Dan Cagetta, who was like ex White House security for like Clinton and Bush, right? Dan's taken a lot of shit recently because like Dan's a kind of chemical weapons expert. I wrote a book called Toxic about the history of chemical weapons and their usage and stuff like that. But he was like he wrote a lot for Bellingcat about Syria's use. About the Skripal case and about Novichok poison, and also he wrote a lot about the use of chemical weapons by Assad in Syria, right? And the evidence for the fact that he'd used them, and a lot of like pro-Russia, pro-China trolls giving him a lot of shit on Twitter, you know, because they're like, nah, there's no evidence for this. And he's like, well, there is, because like I actually fucking really understood the science of this, and I've got degrees in it and shit, and here I've written a book on it, and here's all the fucking evidence. But so we were talking to him about 9/11, and he was like, well, I worked in the Pentagon, and like quite a lot of my friends died when the Pentagon was bombed, and also like I was working in the White House as the president's security detail at the time, so there's no way that could have been.
Specifically, he was the nuclear and biological protection guy for the president at that time. Like, so there's no way that it could have happened.
So
he's like, there's no way that could have been a conspiracy without me knowing about it. So either I know about it and I'm a liar, or it didn't fucking happen.
That's beautiful, man.
And then you're kind of going, you know what? Like, and that, like, I had already by that point that we spoke to him, kind of went from 100% believing it was a conspiracy to being like, nah, it definitely wasn't, to like just that wee kernel of,
it's building.
I don't know, maybe the
problem. If Building 7 hadn't fallen down, I would totally agree with the narrative. But but that's a really good point, and it's about humanising it, isn't it? So I think if you know someone that's died from COVID, then you fucking know that it's real.
That makes a big difference. Yeah.
You know, like you're not fucking about. But there's a whole oh God, I hope anyone that believes in conspiracy theories, please. I don't mean any offence by this comment.
Don't at me. Don't
at me about this. But there's a lot of studies into like the correlation between believing in every conspiracy theory and trauma, childhood trauma, and like a lot of it is like quite interlinked with the idea of trust and about where the trust should and shouldn't lie. And if you haven't if you don't have a disposition for natural trust, then you don't trust anyone. And where do you find natural trust? Well, you find it when you've had a safe and stable upbringing. So a lot, and that's not to say that everybody that believes in conspiracies had a shite life, right? I don't mean it like that. But it is really interesting when you start to piece together how much of this is is linked to a lack of trust, and what is the fundamental reason for that lack of trust, because I also think JFK might have been killed by the government,
100%. I still
so that's just see you were asking where the line is. So there's things that are a bit straightforward for me. See if there's enough evidence or even circumstantial evidence for big government or big business involved in a thing that they shouldn't be involved in. It's probably happening. There's lots of black ops going on. We know these things happen, right? There's no point in, it might be real, it might not be real, but it might be. Do you know what I mean? We see things like the moon landing, for example. The very idea that both Russia didn't call them out for it, and also that every single person that was involved from building the rocket to firing the rocket up, they have all kept their mouth shut for this whole time, apart from one or two. Is fucking apps. People can't keep their mouth shut for fucking 10 seconds, man. They can't.
It would be out by now.
And they were like, you put them in the right situation, they're telling somebody. Now, it might not be them when they're at the pub with their friends. It might be when they're in the hot tub with their wife at the end of the night. It might be when they're on fucking vacation talking to a random stranger because they don't think it'll be. It might be any of these things, but they will talk. They will tell someone.
Somebody would have said something. I know. It's a good point.
Somebody would have brought it up.
Right, so that's that's not a conspiracy. Right, so what about Roswell?
Right, okay. So before we go into specifics, I want to say one thing, right? So I think a healthy amount of cynicism is a positive, right? I think that's something I was brought up with, and I think that people should question things. I think it's good to question things. You shouldn't take everything that's fed to you as education as read, because, I was taught that Jesus' fucking body and blood was fed to me every fucking Sunday at chapel, and that's a mental thing to believe. You know what I mean? Fair play if you do believe in transubstantiation, but you're wrong. No, faith is cool, man. I'm fucking into it, but just I have a problem with organised religion.
Me too.
But
it comes from being part of organised religion for so long.
Exactly, it does.
Makes you hate it.
But media literacy is a big problem, right? And I actually think a lot of the proliferation of conspiracy theories that we see right now is down to people not being able to define what is a good source and a bad source, So they can't tell a difference. And I think if we teach people from an early age how to fucking view that stuff, then we'll see a lot of the problems that we're seeing at the minute with disinformation being proliferate. That'll go away. But okay, so next, what was your next conspiracy theory you wanted to?
I think you raised some really good points there, and it's the difference between these massive, the Mandela effect vibe, where it's these massive life-changing pinnacle moments in history, and the slow trickling down of false information as part of everyday consciousness, and what a beautiful weapon internet is for that. But my next question is,
and Trump's deliberately fucking made it happen as well.
That's why I think it's smarter than people think he is as well, man. A part of me thinks he's a fucking absolute idiot, but another part of me thinks, on some level, this guy is a genius.
I'd say read his niece's book,
Mary's book.
Yeah, I'd say read that. and it'll give you a large insight to his character and his upbringing, his personality. And I don't think you'll think he's that smart afterwards, but I think you'll understand him a hell of a lot better.
I've heard her talk a lot because I watch a shitload too much American TV, but so I've heard her speaking about him a lot, and I get the idea that she thinks he's basically just a full-time professional grifter. But let's get back. I know it's your podcast, but I would like to know what you think.
No, I like it.
About Roswell. Right. So Roswell, JFK, moon landing, we've done that one. What are the other big? The Mandela effect. That's a fucked up one. The idea that
the Mandela effect could scientifically just be parallel universes, like colliding, like.
That's of all the things that I thought you were about to fucking say there. I'm like everything. Like I thought you were just going to say like it could just be the proliferation of the media and the way that we pass on information. It just means that we're passing it down wrong. We're just remembering things wrong, and because you're remembering things, you're never remembering. You're never remembering the thing that happened. You're always remembering the memory of the thing that happened. So over a small dilution of time. That's where I thought you were going with that, but instead you were straight up just like parallel universes smashing against each other.
Like,
and then it could be.
Like scientifically, am I wrong?
No, that's the problem. Darren goes to sleep listening to people talking, right, about how we might be in a hologram already. And like, I fucking can't handle it, but I can handle it right now talking to you. But
simulation theory.
I believe in simulation theory as well. I believe that it's quite probable.
Right, so this could already be like basically a retrospective fitting of like, you know, an idea of society that's a simulation. Like he goes to bed listening to that.
It could be a computer program running through to see what the like potential eventual like. Yeah, something bad had happened and they were trying to figure out, like, especially now that we're in a fucking global pandemic,
and
they could have been trying to figure out the point at which to fix it. That's
a really good point. I hope we're the ones that got it fixed and not the fucking doomsday 3065. I hope we're not those guys.
The important thing with a simulation theory like scenario is that it doesn't actually matter to us as individual psyches and like fucking personalities to consciousnesses. Conscious. That's like, plural. Because it doesn't affect how. Like, it doesn't affect us being in the moment here talking. You know what I mean? Like, so ultimately,
it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make a difference what the construct of the universe is. Whether the universe is something that we don't understand anyway, or it's something that we do understand, doesn't really change the fact that it's there. That's what I think.
Like, whether I've been created by a computer programmer or omnipresent God doesn't change the fact that I love my children.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. This is it, right? So, like, that kind of existential thought I can only cope with when I'm not lying in bed with no sound. Like, so like when I'm lying in bed with no sound and that thought is going through my head, I'm like shouting at myself or shouting at whoever it is that's made me think of the theory that I love my kids, so how am I not real? Like, it's just the only thing I can't handle it. But again, I've got a Charlie Brooker sketch for this. So
you've got a Charlie Brooker sketch for everything.
Charlie Brooker's got a Charlie Brooker sketch for
everything. 2020 is a Charlie Brooker sketch from start to finish, man. Every single party, it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Right. And the words of Mark McGee, it is indeed, man. That's fucking funny.
Just so you know, the Pentagon have confirmed that the civil leadership in the last 24 hours has essentially all been sacked. So essentially the Secretary of Defence, Esper, was fired on Monday. The top Pentagon policy official, the top Defence Department intelligence official, and the Chief of Staff to the Defence Secretary have all been sacked in the last 24 hours.
That's because they've all went, no, Mr. President, I can't do that.
That's why. Because he doesn't. Because they were going to drag him.
That means that they're all going to be replaced.
But you know what? See these guys so high up in the government, been there for fucking years and years. See, this is where Trump is playing with fire, man. Like, he is so deluded that he thinks that nobody's going to be like, right, big man, see what he's just done. We need to do something about this. Like,
the next one that steps up will just give the same answer. Like, it'll just like I might be wrong, but for me, I think it's going to be an escalator of people saying, "No, Mr. President, I'm not doing that." No, Mr. President, I'm not.
The other thing that is against their policy, because I've not actually checked it in any way, shape, or form, but the New European, the Express, the Daily Star, and Nation.com.pk, all of high caliber fucking
there's a good
high end news locations, but every single one of them are reporting the same story. I imagine it's been copied and pasted. It's probably not true that Joe Biden is tipped to be appointing Obama as an ambassador to the UK.
I seen that. Aye, that's hilarious.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
He's wanting Obama to face off with Boris Johnson. Like,
I would love that so.
Johnson will shite his pants. That's what I was saying to Darren. Like Darren, not Darren. Sorry, Darren. Trump. Like for John.
I thought you were mixing him up with Obama there, and I thought you were just apologising.
Gingerness. Well, there's a lot of ginger in this scenario. So, like, Trump made Boris Johnson look good, right? Now, Joe Biden is at the end of his career and life, right? Bless him, right? But he still has 50 years of applied politics experience, right? So, like, here is a guy, right, that whoever he appoints to be the fucking, you know, the diplomat or whatever that talks to us, and thank you, Ambassador, whoever he appoints is going to make Boris Johnson look like a fucking idiot, because he is an idiot, right?
Yeah.
And like Trump has made him look so good. And so this will be really interesting for British politics as well to see where this goes. You know, because
imagine it's Obama, he'll definitely make him look like an idiot. Obama would destroy him, man.
He's a smart guy.
Because essentially, there's not really been any point in British politics where the American leader has came across as more intelligent than the leader of the UK. Like, think about it. Like, I mean, even just in my lifetime,
Reagan and
Thatcher, like
Thatcher had his number, for sure. Yeah. He fancied her.
Even Clinton and Blair.
Aye,
you're going to put your money in Blair there, aren't you?
Clinton is smart.
Bush and any motherfucker, like, you know, really. I mean, like, I think it's wonderful
Obama,
now that we look
Cameron,
back at.
I look back at the Bush years now. Obama
was more my kind of person, but David Cameron was a smart guy. Like, he was a smart guy. He was a fucking good debater as well, man.
That's probably as close as it's got, though, right? That's probably the like, oh, nearly. But then you're straight into Trump and May.
The fucking
Johnson.
goon platoon, you know what I mean? And as well, like, I keep saying to Darren, who's this wee guy? Like Matt Hancock, who is that wee guy? And then Richie's, who's that wee guy? And like, I get this idea of like a fresh face, whatever, but I'm just looking at a bunch of wee guys, man. Like, I don't think like this particular crisis was, you know, it would have been hard for fucking anybody anyway, but I'm looking at a bunch of wee guys.
And it's a new cabinet. But he's pulled, because of the nature of Brexit, he's pulled basically everybody in the Conservative Party who's been directly involved with the Institute of Economic Affairs, this think tank that's like hard Brexit, pro-America. And by the way, all their eggs were in the fucking
Trump basket.
Trade deal with Trump basket. They have fucked themselves, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's not beautiful because it like directly affects the fucking country that I live in at the minute. Like, I'm hoping that'll get fixed in the next fucking 5 years or whatever. But like, to see, like, they really just went, fuck it, doesn't matter about Europe. Like, we can fuck them off because we know we've got Trump in the bag. We've got this trade deal.
And Biden's
we've got
like
Americanization.
Super Irish, man. He's just like,
he's like
fucking try it.
Do you want to speak to the BBC? I'm Irish. Like literally said that on the
That's actually what he said.
That's hilarious, man. And then Farage was like, Joe Biden hates Britain because he said that, man. Just like, mate, shut up, sit down. Honestly, the whole thing.
I live here, and I kind of hate Britain and all. I was born on a fucking RAF base. My dad was in the RAF. My mom's English. And I fucking hate Britain. So can you fucking blame him?
No, it's fucked
You know what I
up,
mean?
man. It's fucked up. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next, although I do wish that I could do it from a kind of impenetrable force field. But I can't, you know, c'est la vie.
In some sort of bubble floating above the cosmos, just watching it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good watch. It's going to be a good watch. It's going to give you something to talk about. It's a story.
I mean,
if you live through it, you're going to be able to say, "I lived through that nonsense, that madness. Lived through it."
It's that Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. We fucking do.
We do, don't we? We do. It's going to be a story to tell the grandkids. I say that much.
Indeed.
Well, listen, right. So I think we got it.
I suppose that's a good time to wrap up. That's a good time to wrap up.
Right. So Becci Wallace, present tense on Bandcamp,
like that,
and
that was fucking weeks ago.
We'll put all the links and stuff up, man. Everybody listen to it. It's a fucking great listen. It's pure fucking raw emotion for a person who fucking means it, who's making music because they want to make music, because they love making music.
Yeah, man.
So everybody should give that a listen.
Please do. And hashtag we are viable or something like that. We are viable. Be creative, people. That's what we're born for.
Quality, right. Thanks.
Right, bye. Just proves to you that the right kind of chocolate with the right kind of person.